Chapter 7:15. The stone egg that had rolled into the bushes with the gold shone with rings of scarlet light, brightening and dimming like it was breathing. The bone-eating shamans noticed this too. The strongest shaman leader had just finished off the pitiful young man's last finger. His sturdy body swelled up even further. He licked the blood on his face as he made his way over. A pair of eyes suddenly opened in the stone egg, like rubies. After a lengthy slumber, Li Qingshan's consciousness slowly returned. He blinked his eyes and sensed the existence of his limbs, but they were trapped by a tough shell. He stretched his body, wanting to break out of the shell. The shaman leader picked up the stone egg and sensed that it was boiling hot, trembling gently. He turned around and asked Gold Earrings hoarsely, "What's this?" Gold Earrings shook his head numbly. The shaman leader squeezed hard, but the stone egg did not budge at all. It flickered quietly. He could not help but let out a "hmm." With his strength, he could even crush steel, let alone rock. He saw a large rock on the side of the road in the distance, so he went over and casually dug a hole in it. He placed the stone egg in there and smashed down with his fist. Boom! The rock shattered to pieces, but the stone egg remained unscathed. Crack! However, a crack appeared on the surface of the stone egg, shining with red light. The crack spread and covered the entire surface before long. Rumble! The thick stone shell finally fell off. The phoenix's embryo was as red as the setting sun. Its surface was covered in beautiful patterns that seemed like burning flames. Even the most beautiful piece of art in the world could not compare to it. Gold Earrings widened his eyes. He never thought the stone egg he had exchanged a jar of salt for would actually be hiding something like this. If he had cracked open the shell a long time ago and revealed this appearance, it would probably be worth even more than the patterned bag. He smiled in a self-deprecating manner. It had already come to this. Who cares if it's worth anything or not? The bone-eating shamans were surprised. They cleaned up the food in their hands in a hurry and gathered over. They studied the phoenix's embryo, but they were unable to see the situation inside. However, Li Qingshan saw the vicious faces through the shell. He could not help but feel rather confused. Weren't I in the volcano? Why am I here? Don't tell me the volcano erupted and washed me out? Oh no, it's the Azura field. All my belongings are in there. The leader shaman licked his fangs. Greed filled his eyes. The bone-eating tribe devoured humans to strengthen themselves, so they were extremely sensitive to life force. The life force in the egg was basically greater than 1,000 or even 10,000 people. If he ate it, he could probably directly become the chieftain when he returned to the tribe. The other bone-eating shamans obviously sensed it too. The greed in their eyes was the same. A skinny, little shaman was unable to resist the temptation, extending his hand in an attempt to touch the egg. He was sent flying by the shaman leader with a slap, landing on the ground. His fate was unknown. The shamans immediately stopped acting up, but their eyes remained glued to the phoenix's embryo. Li Qingshan could clearly see the greedy eyes in front of him. He clenched his hands and feet, but he felt that his body was unprecedentedly tender and weak. The monster Dan was still intact, but all the monster aura had been exhausted and could not be used. He couldn't even use his innate divine abilities. The so-called nirvana rebirth was obviously not about becoming stronger in a short period of time. Instead, it required a process of growth and maturity. He also wanted to make use of this process to adjust the various powers in his body. Right now, he was in his weakest state. After so much difficulty, I managed to escape from the Dragon King of the Sea's pursuit. If I die to these pieces of trash, that would be a joke. Li Qingshan could tell the strength of these bone-eating shamans with a single glance. As humans, they could not reach the 6th layer, and as demons, they could not condense a demon core. Although their bodies were tough, they were at the level of iron plate corpses at most. But right now, he could not even deal with a regular zombie, let alone iron plate corpses. He sensed the scarlet, scorching liquid flowing through his body, which made him purse his lips and smile. The phoenix's embryo suddenly shone brightly. The flame patterns on its surface danced like real flames. The bone-eating shamans suddenly sensed danger. As they gradually broke away from the boundaries of humans, their senses became even sharper, but the greed of humans made them hesitate. They were reluctant to leave. Boom! The phoenix's embryo shattered loudly, and violent, scarlet flames surged out violently, swallowing the bone-eating shamans and reducing them to ashes amidst their howls. The liquid in the phoenix's embryo was a tangible product that Li Qingshan had condensed from the fire of the earth, so the power it contained went without saying. It was not something a few shamans could withstand with their bodies. When all the shamans gathered around the phoenix's embryo, gold earrings moved silently. The bone-eating shamans did not believe he had the right to escape, so they did not restrain him. Suddenly, there was a scarlet flash. He reacted quickly, kicking off with his legs and lunging into the distance. He felt a wave of heat rush over from behind, and he slammed into a tree viciously. His vision darkened, and he almost fainted. He immediately bit the tip of his tongue and forcefully woke himself up. He felt his back burn with pain. It was all thanks to the circle of shamans blocking most of the force of the explosion, allowing him to survive. Gold Earrings was about to take off when he glanced back and saw the young shaman who had been sent flying earlier standing a few steps away. He immediately stiffened up and became immobilized. This was not cowardice. He had faced so many life-threatening dangers in his life that he could still smile even if a blade was pressed to his neck. However, he could not resist this sense of fear. It was said that many animals would lose the power to resist when they faced their natural enemies. No matter how vicious a dog was, it would still tremble with its tail between its legs before a dog butcher. These bone-eating shamans were the natural enemies of humans, true butchers of humans. They were only small compared to their own kind. Killing him was still as easy as raising a hand. "Sai, I've killed these animals. You can say I've gotten my revenge." The jar of salt was worth it. However, the shaman did not even glance at Gold Earrings. A food he could eat at any time was not worth his attention. He focused on the center of the explosion, arching his body and letting out a threatening growl. Who can survive such a violent explosion? Gold Earrings could not help but follow the shaman's gaze. The surrounding trees and grass that had been set alight flickered with fire, but the center of the explosion seemed rather gloomy. All of the flammable vegetation had been reduced to ashes instantly. Vaguely, he made out a very small figure. Don't tell me a monster really did emerge from the egg. That works too. I'll kill all of these man-eating bastards. Even if I'm killed by a monster, it's better than dying to their hands. That's Gold Earrings squinted his eyes before snapping them open again. The Mist Province had never lacked mysterious and strange legends, but everything he had experienced tonight was even stranger than the legends. What emerged from the egg was not a monster, but a baby. He seemed like he had just been born. He was only around a foot tall, and his skin was white and rosy, like he was carved from jade. He seemed extremely young, but his scarlet eyes shone with a soul-stirring light. "There's actually another one. How troublesome." Li Qingshan murmured. He discovered his voice was almost like an infant's murmur. With his current strength, he was still not the bone-eating shaman's opponent. The danger had not been resolved yet. However, just how many dangers had he been through, and how many powerful enemies had he faced? He did not care too much about an opponent like that. Under the bone-eating shaman's threatening growl, he glanced over with his scarlet eyes indifferently. all of the bone-eating shaman's hairs stood on end. He leapt backwards, pacing around on all fours. He was afraid to make eye contact with the scarlet eyes, but he refused to leave just like this. The heavy aura of life drew him in. Li Qingshan made his way over to the bone-eating shaman. His strides were very small, but he walked with ease and composure, without the slightest fear or hesitation. He passed through the flames in the grass, and the flames wrapped around him, coiling around him obediently. The bone-eating shaman staggered backwards. As Li Qingshan advanced, clusters of flames surged over, suddenly turning into a pair of wings of fire and lunging towards the bone-eating shaman. The flames whistled and whistled like a phoenix spreading its wings. Actually, this was just a bluff. Regular flames were unable to deal much damage to a bone-eating shaman with a tough body. The bone-eating shaman let out a wail and fled in a hurry, vanishing into the jungle in the blink of an eye. Don't tell me this infant is a fire devourer. It's said that fire devourers are born from fire, but I've never heard of them turning into eggs. And it's said that most fire devourers live in the south. Who cares? If the fire devourer pursues the shaman, I'll flee immediately. I didn't think I'd actually make it out alive this time. That's unbelievable. Having survived a desperate situation, Gold Earrings thought happily, but he saw that the fire devourer did not pursue the fleeing bone-eating shaman. Instead, he looked at him and asked with a tender voice, "What's your name?" Gold Earrings almost fell into a state of numbness again. He wanted to act like he had heard and seen nothing. The bone-eating shaman who fled through the jungle saw how Li Qingshan did not pursue him, so he stopped hesitantly. Suddenly, he heard a shrill, despairing shriek, and he immediately fled into the distance without even looking back. Clearly, the fire devourer had already begun eating. He did not want to become food, so he'd better report everything here to the chief. Gold Earrings shrieked out, swatting away the flames on his hand desperately. Li Qingshan leapt in fright. He thought, it's just been burned by fire. Do you really have to cry out like a pig being slaughtered? The fear in Gold Earrings' heart had already been suppressed to the limit. With the slightest provocation, it erupted like a balloon that had been punctured by a needle. "Stop howling. I'm asking you a question," Li Qingshan said. His voice was blurry and tender, but the might it contained was not something Gold Earrings could contend with. This was a bearing that could only be developed after experiencing slaughter and grasping life and death. Gold Earrings discovered that his hand had only become bright red from the heat. He no longer dared to look down on Li Qingshan. He prostrated on the ground and trembled. I'm Goldie Abao. That's a good name. Li Qingshan praised without any sincerity. He asked, "Do you want to live or die?" Goldie Abao's desire to live suddenly erupted. He raised his head. "I obviously want to live." Li Qingshan smiled. "Very good. I hate people who don't want to live the most." Chapter 7:16. Li Qingshan's tone of seniority made Goldie Bao lower himself even more. "I definitely won't become someone that Sir hates." Faced with an existence that could even kill shamans so easily, he dared not disobey him at all. "That's good. Raise your head." Goldie Bao raised his head in a hurry, only to see Li Qingshan holding a piece of eggshell in his tender little hand. "Go find all of these pieces right now." "Yes." Li Qingshan just waited where he was and yawned. After such a short, he actually felt rather tired and sleepy. He casually tossed the eggshell into his mouth and chewed it a few times with his few baby teeth before swallowing it. A warm stream spread out, rousing his mind. He rubbed his head, and a layer of fine hair sprouted on it. He could not help but grin. His naive and cute appearance made Goldie Bao shiver all over. He ignored his wounds and began searching through the forest in a hurry. Originally, The spiritual fluid in the phoenix's egg was for Li Qingshan to drink so that he could recover a certain amount of strength to crack the eggshell. Afterwards, he would eat the eggshell, and he would basically be able to move about freely. He would not be as weak as he was right now. However, he was surrounded by these bone-eating shamans, so he was forced to use the most violent method to detonate the phoenix's egg. The eggshell shattered and scattered in the forest. However, he did not find it to be a pity. As long as he survived the current danger, recovering his strength was only a matter of time. The sky had already completely darkened. The rainforest was humid, so the burning vegetation was extinguished before long, turning into white smoke that merged with the night mist. The heavy smell of blood and the pungent smell of being burnt intertwined, gradually permeating the air. Oh, right, there was also the fragrance of dead pack animals being cooked by the wildfire. Li Qingshan wrinkled his nose. He did not have much experience living in rainforests, but he knew that many wild beasts had already begun hunting at this time of the day. The smell flickered like a beacon in the darkness. The reason why he had not approached it immediately was probably because the aura the strange people had left behind earlier still served as a deterrent. Once the smell gradually dispersed, the danger would grow heavier and heavier. Now that there was no fire to borrow, if a ferocious beast appeared, he really wouldn't be a match for it. And if that one ear saw through his weakness, it would be good enough for him to escape. It was also very likely that he would immediately kill him. Those monsters might return, so they had to leave as soon as possible. The sooner, the better. Fortunately, after the flames were extinguished, the light emitted by the eggshell was particularly eye-catching. Thanks to the dense forest, most of the eggshells did not fly far and were nailed to the trees that blocked the way. Goldie Bao, whom Li Qingshan called One Ear, was rather nimble. Before long, he had collected 5 or 6 eggshells. Li Qingshan threw all of them into his mouth. His body grew a little, his hair became much thicker, and even a few more baby teeth grew out. After waiting for the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, the eggshells are almost all collected. Li Qingshan has also grown from a newborn baby to a 1-year-old. Goldie Bao was secretly amazed. He thought, these eggshells are actually rare spiritual items. I wonder what they'll do if I secretly eat one. That was what he thought, but he dared not actually do it. Even if he did not discover it, the spiritual medicine of others could be his own poison. At this moment, he discovered another eggshell the size of a pinky on the ground. Right when he was about to pick it up, a huge centipede lunged over and ate it. Goldie Bao pulled his hand back in a hurry. The most terrifying things in the rainforest were not tigers or leopards, but these inconspicuous insects. If he was bitten, his life would truly be in danger. He did not think the strange infant that seemed like a fire devourer would save his life either. The eggshell flickered with light in the centipede's body. The centipede suddenly swelled up, growing rapidly and going from the size of a palm to the size of an arm in a while. It twisted and rolled about on the ground, becoming particularly vicious. Suddenly there was a crack, and its body broke into over a dozen pieces. It stopped moving. Goldie Bao sucked in a deep breath. Fortunately, he was not greedy. The strange infant's voice rang out from behind him. "What are you doing? Stop dawdling." "Yes." Goldie Bao continued his search in a hurry. As soon as he left, the ground rustled. Who knew how many insects crawled over, devouring the centipede's body? Wild beasts with a certain level of intelligence were still cautious and fearful, but insects that moved based on their instincts could not care about that. They were instinctively drawn in by the pure aura of life. They could not endure this power and died, and their corpses attracted even more insects. After being diluted by the insect corpses, some insects finally survived. Their bodies swelled up rapidly before devouring the other surviving insects. This kind of situation happened in every place where there were eggshell fragments. They frantically devoured each other, forming many insect balls. If one did not see it with their own eyes, they would never imagine that there were so many insects hidden in this forest. Some of the insects were attracted by the carcasses of the pack beasts on the road and flowed over like water. In the depths of the jungle, the auras of wild beasts that slowly drew closer were unable to escape Li Qingshan's senses. That's about it. Go and bring the basket over. Li Qingshan swallowed another eggshell. Although he still seemed like a 1-year-old baby, his physical strength had basically recovered to the level of a grown man. Goldie Abao let out a sigh of relief. If he had to compete with these insects, even 10 lives would not be enough. Taking the basket, Li Qingshan leapt up gently and entered it. Let's leave here first and find a quiet place. Although he had already recovered some of his strength, where regular wild beasts could no longer harm him, since he could use free labor, it was good to save some of his strength. Goldie Abao was more than happy to do so. He had wanted to leave this place a long time ago. When he thought of the mountain stream he had just passed, he picked up the basket and retraced his steps, leaving this land of death without even looking back. The entire merchant group had been wiped out this time. He had truly been extremely lucky to be able to escape in the end, but was his life really safe? If he accidentally angered the strange infant behind him, he would probably be burned alive. Compared to being skinned alive by shamans, it was very difficult to say which was more comfortable. The mountain stream fell off the cliff and turned into a stream, gurgling over the rocks. Goldie Abao stopped. Li Qingshan asked, "Why have you stopped?" Goldie Abao said, "The smell of blood on me is too heavy. I might attract wild beasts, so I need to wash up." "All right," Li Qingshan said. He just happened to have some things he wanted to clarify, so that he could decide what to do next. Goldie Abao carefully put down the basket and used the stream water to clean his wounds. His wounds burned. He had left in too much of a hurry, so he had even tossed the healing pills into his backpack. "Come here. I have something to ask you. Please ask, sir. I was originally cultivating well in the volcano, so why am I here? Tell me, is this your scheme?" Li Qingshan glared at him. He did not seem terrifying at all, but his malice was not fake. "Sir, how could I have that ability?" Goldie Abao explained in a hurry, telling him how he had obtained the stone egg. Li Qingshan sank into his thoughts. He obviously knew that it was impossible for a regular person to fish it out of a magma volcano. He had only said that to scare him, so that he would be more obedient. As it seemed, the situation was pretty much the same as what he had guessed. He really had been spat out by the volcano. The Azura field should have been the same. "Then let me ask you, did you see something?" "What is it?" Goldie Abao thought. "Oh no, is it that pattern bag?" Li Qingshan described the size of the Azura field. Seeing Goldie Abao's gaze drift about, his face changed. He called out sternly, "Where is it now?" "I sold it." Unable to brush him off, Goldie Abao could only admit it. "Who did you sell it to?" It seems like someone from Blackwater Cave." "Seems like?" "Yes, it's definitely someone from Blackwater Cave." Li Qingshan nodded. It was fine as long as he knew its whereabouts. The Azura field was his most important arcane treasure. Basically, all of his belongings were in there, so he had to get it back. As long as he found the Azura field, he could immediately arm himself to the teeth. He could absorb the demon heart, ocean pearl, and divine talisman of great creation back into his body, and his strength would increase drastically. He could even control night roamers, Azura, and even haunt ghosts. He could protect himself with ease. And he even had to ask the Banyan Tree King what part of the Mist Province this was and confirm a path back to the Green Province. Once he lost the Azura field, all of this would become a mirage. However, he was not particularly worried, as the Azura field was an arcane treasure after all. Its brilliance was concealed, so regular people would never be able to see through its functions. Even if they could tell it was extraordinary, they would struggle to refine it. Even second, heavenly tribulation cultivators would struggle to achieve that. In the past, MOU had spent several days refining it, but he still failed in the end, although he could not use his full strength to avoid alarming sea bow. The Azura field back then was only a dragon arena. It could not be regarded as an arcane treasure at all. As long as anyone realized the value of the Azura field, they would store it away carefully, regardless of whether they could refine it or not. As long as they confirmed the Azura field's location, they would be able to find a way to retrieve it. Li Qingshan said nothing. Goldie Bao felt an invisible pressure weigh down on his chest, becoming heavier and heavier, suffocating him. Suddenly, Li Qingshan extended his arm and reached towards Goldie Bao's forehead with his tender little hand. This action scared him out of his wits. He called out, "I can help you find that treasure, sir. The people of Blackwater Cave might still be in the fragrant flower market." The little hand continued to press against his forehead. Goldie Bao thought, "My life is over." However, he felt a warm stream flow through his body. Wherever it passed by, the pain vanished and all of his wounds healed. Even his mind became extremely vigorous. His inner force that had stagnated a long time ago actually broke through once again. Li Qingshan pulled back his hand. "I'm not someone who can't distinguish between kindness and grievances. Those who don't know can't be punished, but you sold something of mine, so you have to help me find it. We'll go to the fragrant flower market right now. If we succeed, it'll benefit you greatly. If not, I can't be bothered with killing a mortal to vent my anger. You better think about it yourself." "Sir, you've saved my life. Trifling matters like this are only natural. How can I possibly ask for any benefits?" Chapter 718. Using both carrot and stick was always the only way to control his subordinates. If he blindly threatened them, it would be easy for them to retaliate. In the upcoming journey, there were still many places where this one ear would be of use. This little favor was just to keep him motivated. After undergoing Nerva rebirth, Li Qingshan gained a deeper comprehension of the Phoenix's scripture of Nerva. Healing Goldie Bao's wounds did not actually take up too much of his strength. All he did was stimulate his life force's potential in an ingenious manner, speeding up his recovery. However, this kind of stimulation could not be overdone. Otherwise, it would overdraft one's life force, and there would be great side effects. It was normal to lose 8 to 10 years of one's lifespan. "Once you're done, let's go." Li Qingshan looked behind him. In the dark forest, there was a faintly discernible path that extended into the depths of the forest. He had a feeling that things were not over yet. Goldie Bao originally wanted to dissuade him. Traveling through the forest at night was not a wise choice. Not only were there nocturnal, venomous insects and ferocious beasts, but the path would also become extremely difficult to traverse. However, when he followed Li Qingshan's gaze, all he saw was deep darkness. His heart shivered for some reason. The bone-eating tribe did not only consist of a measly dozen or so people, and they were renowned for being vengeful. If anyone dared to kill their people, not only that person, but even the entire clan would be annihilated. Now that so many people had been injured, they would probably come out in full force to take revenge. A single shaman was already so terrifying. If there were over 100 of them, probably even the strange infant would not be able to stop them. When the words came to his mouth, they became, "Yes, sir." He picked up the bamboo basket and rushed off in the direction of the fragrant flower market. As long as he made it there, he would receive the protection of the fragrant flower clan. Even the bone-eating tribe would not dare to act recklessly. A gust of wind blew through the sea of trees, rustling loudly, like the waves of the sea. Tens of thousands of tree branches waved, and the tree seemed to have turned into a monster that wanted to devour people. Goldiabao widened his eyes, but he could only barely make out the surroundings within a few steps. The intertwined roots on the ground could easily become a tripping trap if one was not careful. He gathered his inner force and tried to walk as softly as possible to avoid alerting the sharp ears in the forest. Fortunately, he had traveled this trade route for decades. Even if he closed his eyes, he could still picture every twist and turn in his heart. This was a road that had been paved with countless lives. There were far fewer venomous insects here than in the forest, but he still had to be careful of a venomous scorpion or a venomous snake dangling down from the branches. Unlike the tense Goldiabao, Li Qingshan laid in the bamboo basket leisurely with his arms as a pillow, breathing in the humid, hot, yet extremely fresh air as he listened to the wind blowing through the sea of trees. Great waves were set off. He could also hear even more. To and to and sound. He could and sound. He could even to and let. It wasn't just the trees. Every single plant was reaching higher into the sky. He know to grow. He know, not. No, not to, and an all. Him. He and were not to. He. There was no need for him to cultivate arduously and walk the troublesome path of the past all over again. All he had to do was patiently wait for him to grow up and balance the multiple powers in his body during this process. He smiled. He could just treat it as a holiday. He just had no idea when he would be able to return to the Green Province. North Moon's death had probably already caused a very great disturbance. However, to most people, it was just a casual conversation after a meal. Outside the Azura field, there were only a handful of people who cared about North Moon. Chengzan would probably feel sad. He had done his part as a friend, so he would not ask for anything more. Would Ru Xian feel sad for him? That woman had a very venomous mouth, but he firmly believed that not only would she feel sad, but she would even cry. It was said that the tears of merfolk could turn into pearls. I'll have to ask her for a few when I get back. She would definitely feel sad, but she was probably in secluded cultivation. She might not even know about it right now. In comparison, Qiongji was rather lucky. She probably thought he was in secluded cultivation in the Chain Mountains. To cultivators, secluded cultivation for a year or so was nothing. However, it was hard to say. He might even be exposed. This was also what he worried about the most right now. However, since it was useless no matter how he thought about it, he was better off just letting go and focusing on the present, and properly enjoying the scenery of the Mist Province. However, there was still a hint of concern. Little, and are you all right? Qingshan. In the Chan Monastery of Devanaga, Little and cried out involuntarily. Gazing towards the southwest, she experienced unprecedented fear. She bit her lip and composed herself. She took out the bamboo jade, lot of the cloud bookcase, and began divining with the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots. The bamboo jade, lot of the cloud bookcase flew out of the bamboo tube, condensed from light, flickering with rainbow light. She extended her hand and paused for a moment before grabbing the bamboo jade, lot of the cloud bookcase. Her expression changed drastically. Death without a doubt. It was already dusk. The evening bell rang out, and the melodious sound echoed through the Buddhist halls. The lanterns were dim, and smoke curled up. The ancient Buddha stared at the petite figure below. His face was filled with eternal benevolence. Little and gripped the bamboo jade, lot of the cloud bookcase, firmly. Her body trembled gently, and her lips were completely drained of blood. She murmured, "Qingshan, Qingshan." Two specks of white flames suddenly erupted from the depths of her eyes that were as dark as deep pools as she made her way out of the hall. "Where are you going?" The dauntless monk's large figure appeared in front of the hall. His gaze swept past Little En's shoulder and landed on the shattered wooden fish. He frowned slightly before returning to her face. "Abbot, my cultivation has not been going well. I want to go out for a walk." The flames in the depths of Little Anne's eyes receded, and she stowed the bamboo jade, lot of the cloud bookcase, away in her sleeve. Her expression became calm and tranquil, and she brought her palms together and bowed. Just like before, she did not show any respect, nor did she show any arrogance. However, the dauntless monk sensed undercurrents flowing beneath her calm exterior. Situations like this were truly rare. Such a normal reason was extremely abnormal when applied to her. Ever since she entered the monastery, she had not been in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, she had focused on the Buddhist scriptures. The rate at which she progressed surprised everyone. No one doubted that another monk king would appear in the monastery. I've said it before. Before you undergo the second heavenly tribulation and practice the chant of Devanaga, you're not allowed to take a single step out of the monastery. What if I insist on it? Little Anne raised her head and met the dauntless monk's gaze emotionlessly. No one knew that her heart was not just surging with undercurrents. She was basically howling furiously, tempted to incinerate and destroy everything that stood in her way. "You have to get through me first." The dauntless monk was not angered by Little Anne's rudeness, but he became even more certain that the more talented a prodigy was, the more they needed to be controlled, just in case they went astray. On the threshold, the two of them faced each other. Little Anne's chest heaved as she bit her lip subconsciously. Her rationality was gradually twisting and collapsing. If he was no longer here, then what was the point of sitting here, cultivating and remaining in this world? What path was there for her to pursue? What path was there for her to take? Even if she made it through the door, she would have nowhere to return to. The determination in her eyes surprised the dauntless monk, but suddenly he recovered his composure and bowed again. "Yes, Abbot." He turned around and returned to the Buddha statue. He sat down on the cushion and took out another wooden fish, continuing to strike it. The dauntless monk seemed to be in thought. He said, "Focus on the heart as precepts. From precepts comes composure, and from composure comes wisdom. Your Dharma name is one will, but that doesn't mean you can stubbornly do everything. You better cultivate properly." Little Anne raised her face and became confused. She had clearly calculated that she would definitely die, but in that moment, just now, she sensed that he was still alive. This feeling was no different from the palpitation she felt just now. It was like some sort of mysterious revelation, which immediately made her calm down. Her gaze became determined. As long as there was still a sliver of hope, she would do everything she could. Perhaps he just happened to be in need of help right now. She could not do something pointless. Several days later, she finally received some information. After killing a group of demon commanders, the North Moon fought Mou on Calmwave Lake and killed him. Afterwards, the Dragon King of the Sea pursued North Moon for thousands of kilometers, killing him in the wilderness of the Mist Province. North Moon, Mist Province, Dragon King of the Sea. She muttered these 3 words to herself and waited for another half a month before entering secluded cultivation, breaking through to the second heavenly tribulation. Whoosh! Whoosh! Goldie Bow gasped for air, drenched in sweat. He had run for most of the night, so his inner chi was almost completely depleted. His footsteps gradually slowed down. Right when he was about to ask for some rest, an order rang out from the basket on his back. "Stop! There's someone up ahead." "Are they bone-eating shamans?" Bone-eating shamans? You're talking about those strange people, just now. No, they're just some mortals. Li Qingshan said. 100 paces away, there was a bonfire burning, as well as the presence of many humans. That's fantastic. Goldie Bao beamed. He had just been worrying about the issue of food and water. Li Qingshan said, Aren't you afraid they're enemies? Goldie Bao said proudly, I've been a merchant for many years, so I've made quite a name for myself in this generation. I have friends in various caves and villages, so it's perfect for me to ask for some food and water. If I'm lucky, I might even be able to borrow a mount, so I'll be able to travel faster. Not to mention, sir, you're here, so why should I be afraid of a few measly mortals? His last sentence was already a test. After running for most of the night, he slowly calmed down and recovered his usual cleverness. He felt like it was very likely that this strange infant was not as powerful as he imagined him to be, or why would he let the fleeing shaman go? And he just sat in the basket patiently like that. Li Qingshan said indifferently, Are you doubting me? How would I dare? Goldie Bao's heart leapt. He still spoke extremely politely, but his heart began to pound. Let's go. Li Qingshan could not be bothered with explaining anything. By the time his suspicions turned into actual action anyway, his strength would have already recovered to a level where he could kill him. It was normal for him to doubt him, but what he did after that would directly determine his fate. If he obeyed his orders obediently and helped him retrieve the Azura field, Li Qingshan did not mind giving him some benefits. If he wanted to use this opportunity to do something, he would just have to kill him. You choose your own path. Take care of yourself. To be continued. Mobile users, please read it at M. Chapter 719. That meaningful sentence made Goldie Bao shiver inside. He slowly walked forward, silently adjusting his breathing at the same time. Suddenly, he stopped and said emotionally, Sir, please don't look down on me too much. I've lived for so long, so I still know how to repay a debt of gratitude. Not only have you saved my life, but you've even helped me take revenge. It's only natural for me to repay you with my life. He he he. A childish laughter rang out from the basket. Li Qingshan smiled. I've seen quite a few people. Some are smart, some are stupid, some are cunning, some are loyal, and unknowingly I've developed a knack for judging people. If I really want you to repay me with your life, you probably won't do it no matter what. Goldie Bao's expression stiffened. He felt rather awkward. He had indeed only said this after careful consideration. No matter what choice he made in the future, he had to obtain this strange infant's trust as much as possible. If it really was a dead end, he definitely would not take it. In this sea of trees, survival would always be the most important. Compared to revenge and repaying a debt of gratitude, it was all secondary. Li Qingshan said, Since you're a merchant, let's talk business. If this deal goes through, the benefits will be 100 times, 1,000 times better than that 100 taels of gold. I can guarantee that you won't have to do this for the rest of your life. If it doesn't work out, even if you don't want to repay me with your life, it's not up to you. Then, in other words, we're partners in business. May I ask for Sir's great name? Goldie Bao laughed dryly, but he was greatly moved inside. Just call me you. Li Qingshan considered it. Originally, he wanted to make up a fake name, but he really did not have much talent for names, so he just used his real name and covered it up slightly. Yes, Sir Ayu. Speaking of which, our fort has someone called Goldie Ayu. Goldie Bao thought, this name sure is ordinary enough. I can tell it's a fake name with a single glance. Barbarians did not have much talent for names either. They often used the name of the village as their surname, and their names would be a Bao, a Lan, or something like that. There were many you, both male and female. What a coincidence. We're almost there. I don't want to see anyone, so you go deal with them. Goldie Bao had already seen the flickering firelight in the forest. He felt that his strength had recovered slightly, so he strode over. Who are you? One of them shouted in a low voice and pulled out his saber. The people around the bonfire woke up and immediately took out their weapons. I'm Goldie Bao. Is that Huang Liangfei from Huangliang Beach up ahead? Goldie Bao was overjoyed when he heard the voice. It just so happened that he knew someone. Is that Uncle Pa from Gold Fort? Please come over. We just said that you made a fortune in the fragrant flower market. Why are you here? Huang Liangfei stowed his blade away and invited Goldie Bao over to the campfire. He saw that his clothes were tattered and covered in blood. He was even missing an ear. He could not help but become surprised. What's going on? Where are the others? Sai, we've been robbed. Goldie Bao glanced around. There were 8 of them, but it was a pity that they did not have pack beasts. After all, they were not specialized merchants. Who is so audacious to dare rob the caravan of Goldie Fort? The bone-eating tribe. Goldie Bao spat out 4 words, and everyone's expression changed. Huang Liangfei asked, The bone-eating tribe is up ahead. Goldie Bao told him what had happened, but he skipped over the matters related to Li Qingshan. He only said that a powerful, vicious beast had thrown a wrench into their plans, which was why they managed to escape. This is the retribution of those monsters, and it's also because you've done good deeds, receiving the blessings of the Bodhisattva. Come eat something. Only then did Huang Liangfei stop worrying. He did not doubt what he said. If it were not for a coincidence like that, how could he have survived the mouths of the bone-eating shamans? He glanced at the basket on Goldie Bao's back. He refused to toss it away even as he fled, so who knew what kind of good stuff was in there? Thank you. I'll definitely repay you when I go to Huangliang Beach in the future. No, we should be the ones thanking you, or we probably run headfirst into the mouths of the bone-eating tribe. A kid suggested turning around and returning to the fragrant flower market, but Huang Liangfei immediately turned him down. Not only was traveling at night dangerous, but it also took up a lot of energy, so they could not travel too far. After all, not everyone possessed Goldie Bao's martial arts and experience, so they were better off resting properly and setting off in the morning. However, when they heard such a thrilling story, none of them felt sleepy anymore. They gathered around the campfire and discussed the chilling legends related to the bone-eating tribe one after another. The flickering firelight passed through the gaps in the basket, landing on Li Qingshan's intrigued face. He never thought the group of strange people were actually all humans. However, a tribe like this that relied on cannibalism to cultivate could only exist in this land of wilderness. If it were the Green Province, the Hawkwolf Guard would definitely destroy them. At this moment, he felt a probing gaze cast into the basket. As it turned out, it was Huang Liangfei. Afterwards, even more gazes appeared. Even though Goldie Bao sat beside the campfire, he did not put down the basket on his back. This action attracted quite a lot of attention. Huang Liangfei was still considering what to say when the kid who suggested turning around earlier asked, Uncle Bao, what's in your basket? Nothing much, just some goods. Goldie Bao sensed the gazes in the surroundings begin to change slightly. He thought, oh no, I actually missed out on this. If he said there was nothing important in the basket right now, probably no one would believe him apart from the naive kid who had asked about it, unless Surayu walked out himself for them to see. But Surayu clearly had no intentions of doing that. Li Qingshan sat in the basket calmly and sneered slightly. He just happened to find this labor not strong enough. Huang Liangfei exchanged glances with his companions. He had heard that Goldie Bao had earned 100 taels of gold from selling a wondrous item in the fragrant flower market this time. Coupled with the ores, it was quite a bountiful harvest. Was it all in the basket? Only the kid failed to sense the change in the atmosphere at all. He asked about the appearance of the bone-eating people in fear and excitement. Normally, not a lot of people would target a merchant group. Even if the ambush succeeded, the revenge of Goldie Fort would be no laughing matter. Now that Goldie Bao was in such a sorry state, Huang Liangfei was confident he could kill him alone, and no one would know he had come here. The people of Goldie Fort would only think the bone-eating people had eaten him clean. He could obtain what was in the basket on his back without any risk at all. This was an extremely rare opportunity. Malice permeated the surroundings of the campfire. Goldie Bao suddenly fell silent, lowering his head and trembling all over. A sliver of contempt flashed through Huang Liangfei's eyes. He never thought an old merchant like him would actually become so frightened. He crouched down and said hypocritically, "Uncle Bao, are you fine?" Goldie Bao said nothing. It was not that he did not want to speak, but that he was unable to. At this moment, a small hand passed through the gap in the basket and pressed against his back gently. Streams of heat flowed through his body, and all of his blood began to boil. Endless power seemed to surge out of his body, filling every inch of his body. Huang Liangfei's hand had already reached for the hilt of his blade. Goldie Bao suddenly raised his head. His face was bright red, and he seemed even more vicious. He grabbed Huang Liangfei by the neck and was about to crush it hard when a tender voice rang out from the basket. "Don't kill him!" Goldie Bao struck Huang Liangfei's chest with a backhand. With a thump, Huang Liangfei's ribs cracked, and he was sent flying. Only now did he return to his senses. He was utterly shocked. Since when did his martial arts become so powerful? "There's a child in the basket. Uncle Bao, what are you doing?" The kid said in surprise, but his voice was drowned out by the roars of his companions. Clang! The barbarians all drew their blades and swung them at Goldie Bao. A gust of wind blew over, and the campfire danced wildly. Their shadows blurred about like ghosts. Goldie Bao punched out with both fists and sent another 2 barbarians flying, but he was unable to avoid the other blades. A few fire snakes suddenly surged out of the campfire, shooting towards the barbarians' eyes. Fire! Arc! Although the barbarians were fierce, they subconsciously covered their eyes when their vitals were suddenly injured, letting out miserable cries. How could Goldie Bao let go of an opportunity like this? He swung his fists and legs, knocking all the barbarians from Huangliang Beach to the ground. Although he did not kill them because of Li Qingshan's orders, they were all heavily injured and had their bones broken. In the time it took for a spark to fly off, the clash had already ended. Goldie Bao looked at his hands. He struggled to believe that this was his own strength. He felt like he had not even used his full strength. Don't celebrate too early. Be careful of shortening your lifespan. Li Qingshan leapt out of the basket. Arg, shortening my lifespan? I've completely unleashed all the potential in your body. If you wait for this to subside, you might even die. Li Qingshan sniggered. You dash. Goldie Bao's face changed. His excitement immediately turned into fury, but when he met the scarlet eyes, he dropped to his knees with a plop and called out, "Please save me, Suryu." Since he was bold enough to say it, he was clearly not afraid of him learning about it. Li Qingshan smiled in satisfaction. If he dared to stab him with a single sentence, then he would have to consider switching labors. He made his way over to the campfire and extended his fingers. The flames transformed into various shapes and sizes. You don't mind eating people, do you? Arg. Goldie Bao looked at the barbarians on the ground. You don't want me to kill them? Don't tell me you want me to be like the bone-eating tribe. He gritted his teeth. I don't mind. Sura, do you know the shaman arts of the bone-eating tribe? As long as he could survive, he was willing to do anything. That's good. I don't know any shaman arts, but I've gained some inspiration. Pull that guy's surnamed Huang over. Yes. Goldie bow pressed Huang Liangfei before Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan pressed his hand against his forehead. Huang Liangfei, who was originally on the brink of death, began to put up a violent struggle before suddenly collapsing and becoming motionless. Li Qingshan held a bright red ball of flames in his hand. This was all of the life force in his body, or in other words, it was the fire of life. The very nature of the bone-eating tribe's cannibalism was to devour this life force. This power was far too impure to him and completely useless, but to mortals, it was without a doubt a complete supplement. Open your mouth. He flicked it gently, and the flames flew towards Goldie Bao's mouth. Goldie Bao opened his mouth in a hurry and felt a warm stream flow into his stomach, spreading out and rousing his spirits. Thank you, Sura, you. Li Qingshan nodded. Danger was approaching. So he would just nurture this only subordinate of his a little, just in case he was useless when it mattered. Chapter 720. The night deepened, and the smell of blood became even heavier. The corpse of a pack animal collapsed in the center of the path, but no vicious beasts approached it the entire time. They paced around in the distance before fleeing into the depths of the jungle in fright. The murky eyes of a pack animal suddenly twitched, and a black insect crawled out before turning around and burrowing back in. The pack animal's colossal body was riddled with wormholes of various sizes, revealing bloody, white bones. A huge, colorful spider monopolized the pack animal's body, plunging its mouth into the skull and sucking away the brain. Insects of various sizes had already completely taken over this place. They were everywhere on the ground and in the sky as if they were the masters of the jungle. Specks of green light suddenly lit up in the darkness. They were pairs of eyes. Vicious figures emerged from the forest. The shamans of the bone-eating tribe had arrived. Chief, it's here. The shaman who had been frightened away by Li Qingshan said to the colossal figure in front of him fearfully, Guinsects? There are shamans among them? The bone-eating chieftain glanced back. No one could tell that he had once been a human. His white, curved teeth protruded, and his muscular arms drooped to the ground. He seemed like a combination of a black bear and a gorilla, except his fur was a little sparse. His voice was like the growl of a wild beast, filled with deterrence. No, there shouldn't be. Then where did these goo insects come from? The bone-eating chieftain was filled with vigilance. If it were not for shamans, how could they gather so many goo insects in such a short time? Although the bone-eating tribe was definitely the most vicious predator in this rainforest, the lessons of his ancestors prevented him from underestimating other shamans. These insects aren't under anyone's control. They taste quite nice, said a bone-eating shaman with a head of white hair. Unlike other bone-eating shamans, he was extremely skinny. If it were not for his vicious face, he seemed like a regular old man at first glance. He held a cane in one hand, and there was a shriveled human head at the top of the cane. He grabbed an insect the size of a forearm in his other hand, shoving it into his mouth and biting it. With a spurt, yellow-green juice spurted out. He was satisfied. Shaman priest, what do you think is going on? The bone-eating chieftain asked. His voice was filled with respect. Even barbarian tribes had shaman priests. Their status was only second to the chief, or even higher. They grasped divination, sacrifices, healing, and so on. They were a symbol of power in shaman tribes. They must have been attracted by something. After eating that thing, they became so big in such a short period of time. The bone-eating shaman priest gestured with his long, withered hands. Suddenly, he swung his staff and smacked the shaman's head forcefully. "You bastard! You said the baby was born from an egg." "Yes, yes, yes, witch priest. It's an eggshell. Look around. There might be fragments." The bone-eating chieftain wrinkled his nose and glanced around. He arrived in front of a large tree and plunged his claws into it viciously, digging out the tree core. After crushing it, a scarlet fragment the size of a grain of rice appeared. The dense aura of life within it surprised him. It was no wonder these insects could grow so large in such a short amount of time. His face was filled with greed. Even a mere eggshell was like this. So what would happen if he ate the entire egg? The only thing he worried about was the identity and origins of the baby born from the egg. He had no idea whether he was strong or weak. The bone-eating shaman priest smiled. Back then, he was probably very weak. If he had a choice, why would he let the eggshells scatter all over the ground? A coward like you actually ran away in fright. He, you're just unlucky. If you ate him, you might even be able to draw down heavenly lightning. It's even better than eating 100 or 1,000 people. Deep regret flooded the shaman's face, but when he thought of the scarlet eyes, his heart shivered. He thought, if you meet those eyes, you'll definitely run too. Chase him. I'll definitely eat that baby and avenge my children. The bone-eating chieftain swung his arms and bellowed out viciously. Roar. The bone-eating shamans roared out in response. The shamans rushed into the depths of the jungle on all fours. To them, Goldia, Bowzora, and footprints were basically as clear as road signs. Li Qingshan's method of extracting life force became more and more proficient. Before long, all of the howls and howls vanished, reduced to withered corpses. Only the naive kid who had no idea what was going on remained, sitting on the ground limply like he was in a nightmare. Li Qingshan did not seem to see him either, returning to his seat by the fire. "Sir, what do we do with this kid?" Goldie, Bao lifted the kid up in a single stroke. As life force surged into his body, his eyes became rather bloodshot too. It was no wonder that the bone-eating shamans were so meticulous when they ate people. Nothing could compare to the pleasure. Right now, all he wanted was a little more. "It's not like they provoked you." Li Qingshan stared at the flames and extended his hands into the fire. "If we don't kill them all, Huangliang Beach will probably come for revenge." Goldie Bao said, although the people of Huangliang Beach had tried to murder him first, there was no right or wrong in the jungle. Only the strong preyed on the weak. It was better to avoid as much trouble as possible. Is Huangliang Beach also a shaman tribe like the bone-eating tribe? Of course not. How can there be so many shaman tribes? At most, they have a shaman doctor watching over them. Then what are you afraid of revenge for? Goldia Bao suddenly returned to his senses. Before he knew it, the surroundings had become much brighter. The gloomy jungle now cleared up like it was dusk. He casually grabbed a blade from his waist and twisted it forcefully. The blade twisted, and the tough metal became like clay in his hand. He felt like he was filled with endless energy. He was so energetic that he felt like he had returned to his 20s. No, he felt even better than back then. This was the power that only shamans possessed. With this power, why would he be afraid of revenge from Huangliang Beach? It was Huangliang Beach who had to worry about him venting his anger on them and destroying their Huangliang clan. And as long as he continued to follow this AU, this power would definitely grow stronger and stronger. "Thank you, sir." Goldie about tossed aside the kid from Huangliang Beach and knelt on the ground, bowing his head. The gratitude on his face was definitely genuine. The people of the Mist Province's desire for power was not something people from a peaceful place like the Green Province could imagine. Just the value of this power was 100 times greater than gold. He had already made up his mind to properly cling onto this person. Even if there were some risks, it would be worth it. Riches came with risk. Looking at this person's personality, he did not have to worry about him burning the bridge after crossing it at the very least. Prepare to set off. Li Qingshan stood up and said, "Yes." Originally, Goldie Bao was utterly exhausted and planned on resting, but after absorbing the life force of 7 or 8 people, he no longer felt any exhaustion. He removed a set of clothes from the corpses and changed into them, equipping himself with a blade. He even gathered some food, water, gold, and other valuables, making ample preparations. He seemed like he was brimming with energy, completely different from his uneasy state a few hours ago. Chapter 7:21. Goldie Bao picked up the basket on his back and set foot on the path to the fragrant flower market. The forest rapidly receded, gradually adapting to his new power. His footsteps became faster and faster. Whether it was the deep darkness or the tangled roots, they were no longer obstructions. With a gentle step on the ground, he leapt several dozen steps away. He was delirious with joy, almost forgetting about the danger behind him. "Walk in a straight line," Li Qingshan suddenly said. Goldie Bao was taken aback. He returned to his senses. He was no longer the Goldie Bao of the past. The path through the forest was not straight, and it was restricted by the terrain and environment, twisting and turning. If the bone-eating tribe really did chase after them, they would definitely send people to the fragrant flower market and intercept them on the way. This would be much faster than traveling along the path. As a merchant who had lived in the Mist Province for most of his life, he actually needed someone to remind him. So he could not help but feel rather ashamed. In fact, he had not yet adapted to his new power. He had forgotten that there were many dangers and obstacles in the forest, and they were nothing to him. "Yes, my lord." At a turning point, he moved forward in a straight line. With a leap, he flew down the cliff. He bounced on the rock walls to slow down the speed of his fall. Finally, he landed lightly on a tree in the forest. The branches were bent, and he used the force to jump onto another tree and continued forward. "You won't get lost, right?" "Don't worry, my lord. I won't. Be careful of snakes," Li Qingshan said, casually. Goldie Bao was taken aback, confused. He leapt over a few more trees, and a thick vine suddenly flew up. It was actually a python with skin extremely similar to a vine. It opened its bloody mouth and bit at him. This pounce was as fast as a crossbow. In the past, it would have taken his life, but now was different from the past. He stretched out his left hand and grabbed the python's vital point. "Leave it for me. Don't stop," Li Qingshan said again. She stretched out her small hand and patted the python's body. The python immediately began to twitch. Goldie Bao understood and became even more excited. As he carried the python, he charged between the trees. After a while, a withered dead snake was thrown under the tree, and a blood-red flame appeared in Li Qingshan's hand. "Lord you, can snakes be used as well?" "The bone-eating tribe specializes in eating humans," Goldie Bao said with some worry. "How can those barbarians compare to my methods?" Li Qingshan had a nirvanic rebirth experience. Having truly comprehended life and death, the life force he extracted was extremely pure. The wondrous power of the phoenix could not be compared to shaman tribes that inherited primitive shaman arts. He casually slammed the life force into Goldie Bao's back. "Thank you, my lord." Goldie Bao relaxed. He felt that his luck had really taken a turn for the better. It was worth it even if the entire caravan was wiped out. It was not that he was heartless, but it was normal for people to die in this desolate rainforest. He had been a merchant for dozens of years and had experienced such things more than once or twice. He had long gotten used to it. The only thing he could do was to become stronger. That was the most important thing. But it's not like there aren't any side effects. Li Qingshan changed the topic, which made Goldie Bao's heart leap. What side effects? If your life force is too heterogeneous, it's actually not a good thing. I think you'll only be able to survive one heavenly tribulation in your lifetime. Don't even think about going any higher. Heavenly tribulation. Goldie Bao had only heard of these two words in legends. Existences that had undergone heavenly tribulations were already existences that were close to God's. They could even look down on the bone-eating tribe. This was like saying that to a pauper. Sigh, you can only be a millionaire for the rest of your life. Don't even think about becoming a billionaire or a tycoon. That was definitely something he was willing to do. Please, sir, you have to let me endure this side effect. I'm willing to do anything for sir. Goldie Bao said from the bottom of his heart. He already understood just how powerful this person was. Doing anything for an existence like that was definitely not a humiliation, but an honor. That'll depend on your performance. If you want to do anything for me, you still don't have the right. If you were a beauty, then I might be able to ride her, but if it's someone like you, you better forget about it. Sir, if you like beauties, Fragrant Flower Market has as many as you want. I guarantee you that you'll be satisfied. Goldie Bao snickered. Li Qingshan glanced at his crotch and said in exasperation, "Shut up. Let's go." The sky lit up, and the red sun rose from the east. A figure leapt out of the sea of trees, reaching the top of an extremely tall tree in just a few steps. Goldie Bao gazed into the distance and discovered that the distance he had traveled in a single night was already equivalent to 2 or 3 days of normal travel. He did not need to rest or take any detours. This was the benefit of strength. Actually, he had still taken a slight detour. When he passed through a forest, Li Qingshan had specially made him take a detour. Goldie Bao had no idea what he was avoiding, but he knew that if he ran into it, only death would be awaiting him. The Fragrant Flower Market was already in sight. He pointed at an undulating curve at the end of the sea of trees and said, "Sir, look, the Fragrant Flower Market is right below that hill. You better look backwards." Li Qingshan rested his head on his arm and said lazily, after a night, his scarlet hair seemed much thicker, and it was no longer as soft as when he was just born. He closed his eyes slightly. There was nothing more delightful than breathing in the fresh morning air and sensing his strength grow stronger. "What's that?" Goldie Bao gazed backwards and squinted his eyes. He finally saw it clearly. The sea of trees in the distance rippled unnaturally, currently drawing closer in his direction. A sneer appeared on Li Qingshan's standard, doll-like face. Guess, the bone-eating tribe. Goldie Bao leapt off the treetops and rushed towards the Fragrant Flower Market. He fled even faster than a mouse that had seen a cat. He had yet to recover from the fright last night. The terror of the bone-eating shamans had already been deeply engraved in his heart. "Sir, please unleash my potential. You're not afraid of losing your lifespan." "Not afraid," Goldie Bao said resolutely. He could make up for the lost lifespan, but if he was captured by the bone-eating tribe, then his entire life would be wasted. Li Qingshan smiled gently and patted Goldie Bao's back. "If I flee to the Fragrant Flower Market, won't they come chasing after me?" The Fragrant Flower Clan has their own shaman watching over it. Although the Fragrant Flower shamans are not as vicious as the bone-eating shamans, The first daughter of the patriarch is a follower of the White Lotus sect. The bone-eating tribe would never dare to offend her. Goldie Bao's blood surged. He suddenly sped up and fled even faster. The White Lotus sect. Li Qingshan was taken aback. Why did it sound so familiar? Was it the White Lotus sect that Gu Yenying had chased out of the Green Province? What's the name of their cult master? Who knows her real name? She's known as the White Lotus Mother, and they say the White Lotus Bodhisattva has descended into the mortal world to save people from suffering and bring them back to life. There's also the Vice Cult Master, Venerable Black Lotus, who's even more benevolent. They're all like immortals. Originally, everyone here worshipped the snake god, but they've all converted to the White Lotus sect now. Goldie Fort has consecrated them. Oh, right, last night, Huang Liangfei said, I was under the protection of the Bodhisattva. So he was talking about the White Lotus Bodhisattva. Li Qingshan could not help but laugh aloud. However, his voice was far too tender, so there was not much heroism to speak of. Goldie Bao asked tactfully, Sir, why are you laughing? I didn't think I'd run into someone I know here. Li Qingshan said, Someone you know? Don't tell me you're talking about the White Lotus Bodhisattva and Venerable Black Lotus. Sir, Goldie Bao's heart trembled. Although he knew Sir Yu's identity was anything but ordinary, being connected to such a powerful existence without a doubt was even more shocking. Once we reach the fragrant flower market, sir, all you need to do is mention the great name of the White Lotus sect, and those bone-eating shamans will definitely collapse without even putting up a fight. I'm not done yet. It's just a pity that I know them, but they don't know me. Oh, right, don't tell anyone about this. Li Qingshan instructed. Before he recovered his strength, he did not want to have anything to do with the White Lotus sect. Yes. Goldie Bao was greatly disappointed, but he could not help but feel rather afraid. Was Sura, you referring to enemies? How could he be bold enough to say anything else? He could also tell that the White Lotus sect had only been around for a short period of time. Otherwise, with their ability to brainwash people, Goldie Bao would probably even consider betraying Sura Yu if they had been around for a few more decades. Anyway, the rules of the fragrant flower market are extremely strict. Even the fiercest barbarians are afraid to fight in the fragrant flower market. These bone-eating shamans are all different from regular people, so they probably can't even enter the city. As long as we remain in the city, we'll be at ease. Li Qingshan did not answer. Instead, he sank into his thoughts. He had a very deep impression of Altar Lord Black Lotus. He was a man with an extraordinary bearing, able to break free from the encirclement of Zhou Tong and the other school leaders. After so many years, it was very likely that he had already condensed a golden core. The White Lotus Mother had basically recovered from her wounds as well. She was a powerful figure who had clashed with Gu Yenying many times in the past. In the past, he did not understand the significance of this very well, but only now did he understand a little what kind of power this represented. The bird woman had hidden her strength extremely well. Even now, he was unable to see the full extent of it. Even if he fought against the White Lotus Mother in a playful manner, there would be no point to the game at all if the opponent was too much weaker. The first time he heard about the White Lotus sect was when the White Lotus Mother massacred cities to forge an arcane treasure. Back then, he was shocked by the word massacred cities, but now he was shocked by the word arcane treasure. That was an arcane treasure. Right now, he only possessed a single arcane treasure, and he had even taken advantage of Si Qing. Si Qing was a mighty prince. One of his main reasons for coming to the Rui Commandery was to forge the Dragon Arena into an Azura field, a true arcane treasure. It was not necessarily a coincidence that he had barged into the territory of the White Lotus sect this time. With the two of them working together, without the suppression of the Hawkwolf Guard and Orthodox sects, It was far too easy for them to influence a range of several thousand kilometers. When considering how sparsely populated the Mist Province was, this range might be even greater. They wanted to rebuild the White Lotus sect, so they definitely would not venture too deeply into the Mist Province. The organizations there were deeply entangled, so it would definitely be quite difficult to interfere. The Banyan Tree King's direct control spanned tens of thousands of kilometers. As for Li Qingshan's escape, he had not actually ventured too deeply into the Mist Province. This place could only be regarded as the outskirts of the Mist Province. Fragrant Flower Market was only where a disciple's home was located. He was probably still several thousand kilometers away from the true headquarters of the White Lotus sect. Chapter 722. Don't worry, they'll slow down very soon. Li Qingshan said unconcernedly. He had never treated these bone-eating shamans as any sort of opponent. If they really did catch up, he could directly abandon Goldie, Bao, and go wherever he wanted. Just a group of shamans wanted to lock onto his aura. However, that would mean he would lose a means of transport, and it would add a lot of trouble when he searched for the Azura field. His image as a child was still very inconvenient after all. That was why he played around with them, casually. Once some time passed, and he recovered some of his strength, he would find them and make them bleed one by one. Sure enough, the bone-eating shamans stopped. They had no idea what had happened. Goldie, Abao's heart skipped a beat. It's the place we circled around. A large, colorful toad currently sat by the side of the pond, blocking the path of the bone-eating shamans. It gave off faint demon chi as it stared at them firmly with its bubble-like eyes. We're finally back. Standing in front of the city gates of the Fragrant Flower Market, Goldie, Abao, let out a long sigh. He dared not stay any longer, entering the city quickly. A while later, the bone-eating shamans rushed over too, hiding in the jungle and gazing at the city gates from afar. They were all extremely furious. They had killed the toad monster after so much difficulty, and they even lost 2 clansmen for it. Poisonous gas invaded their bodies, melting them into a pile of mush in the blink of an eye. They could not even eat them. Chief, they've entered the city. What do we do? The bone-eating chieftain's expression was twisted. He was tempted to immediately charge in, capture the barbarian from Goldie Fort, skin him alive, and swallow the infant alive. If this were a few years ago, he definitely would have done that. The Fragrant Flower clan had some strength, but they were not bold enough to do anything to them. However, he could not do that now. The damned women of the Fragrant Flower clan have allied themselves with the White Lotus sect. We can't barge in, the bone-eating shaman priest said. He knew the bone-eating tribe could run amok in this rainforest, but compared to the White Lotus sect, they were just a bug that could be crushed at any time. When the White Lotus sect first established a branch, many shaman tribes that refused to submit were destroyed in a single night. The bone-eating tribe could remain safe not because they were powerful. It was the exact opposite, because they were too weak. They did not even have a single person who had undergone the heavenly tribulation. The White Lotus sect did not take them seriously at all. If they wanted to live long, they had to understand that there were some things that they could not provoke. The bone-eating chieftain looked back suddenly and said sternly, "Eating chieftain, dawn of me, of course." "Of course not. Once night falls, we'll sneak into the city, capture the person, and leave. I doubt those damned women will fall out with us over this. At most, we'll just give in to them first. As long as you eat the baby and undergo the heavenly tribulation, you'll become an altar lord of the White Lotus cult, and the Fragrant Flower Market will belong to our bone-eating tribe." The the T said of the shans the bone teat, and T of. All right, The bone-eating shamans roused up. However, unbeknownst to them, Li Qingshan heard everything from the basket on his back. He murmured, "They sure know how to court death." "What's wrong, sir?" Goldie Abao's ears twitched, and he asked softly. Li Qingshan repeated the bone-eating shaman's conversation, and Goldie Abao paled in fright. Originally, he thought the bone-eating shamans would back off in the face of difficulty as long as they entered the fragrant flower market, but he never thought they would be willing to take such a great risk. This was not because Goldie Abao was not clever enough, but purely because his status was too low and his horizons were limited. In the world he lived in the past, no barbarian tribe was bold enough to behave atrociously in the fragrant flower market, or only death would await them. As a result, he developed the misconception that the bone-eating tribe was afraid of entering the city, and he never imagined just how great of a temptation Li Qingshan was to the bone-eating tribe. What do? No, we need to go to the fragrant flower market and ask for protection. Goldie Abao said. The fragrant flower market was in the center of the fragrant flower market, where the fragrant flower clan resided. What right do you have to ask for their protection? As long as the bone-eating tribe is willing to pay the price, the fragrant flower clan will probably sell you off immediately. Li Qingshan said in disdain. Goldie Abao had obtained some life force, but he had only barely surpassed the realm of mortals. Compared to the entire cultivation community, he was at the very bottom. Faced with the pressure of the bone-eating tribe, the fragrant flower clan would do everything in their power to protect him unless he was called Xianghua Abao. Goldie Abao was speechless. Then let's keep running. I can guarantee you that you won't be able to escape more than 10 kilometers. Goldie Abao paled. Originally, he thought he had escaped with his life, but he never thought he would fall into a trap of death. As soon as he thought about how the people of the bone-eating tribe were waiting outside the city and would come for his puny life, once night fell, the clamor in the surroundings completely failed to give him any sense of safety. And we still have to find the people of Blackwater Cave. What are you running for? Turn left up ahead, Li Qingshan said. Goldie Abao listened to how relaxed he was and eased up slightly. He turned left. Sir, you've come to Fragrant Flower Market before. Yeah, didn't I come with you once when I was still in the egg? After undergoing nerve rebirth, Li Qingshan's body was still very feeble, but his senses were even sharper than before. Throughout the entire Fragrant Flower Market, even the fluttering of a flying insect could not escape his ears. People flowed to and fro on the streets. The sounds of hawkers constantly rang out, and the fragrance of roasted meat constantly entered his nose. The city was not large, but it seemed very prosperous. Barbarians dressed in various strange clothes and spoke with different accents gathered here from everywhere, which made Li Qingshan feel like he was on a cultural tour. He admired the culture and scenery of the Mist Province with great interest. Goldie Abao was not in such a good mood. He walked around in a hurry for a while, and a wondrous fragrance appeared. The entire street was filled with spice stores. Spices were essential resources in the Mist Province. They could ward off plagues, miasma, venomous insects, and so on. The Fragrant Flower Clan was renowned for their ability to make spices. Go in and buy a few spices commonly used by barbarians. Under Li Qingshan's guidance, Goldie Abao wandered around the city, basically going through every single street. In the end, he stood in front of a hot spring with the new clothes he had bought. Fragrant Flower Market was close to the volcanoes, so it was very easy to carve out a hot spring. Goldie Abao immediately understood. He wanted him to wash off his scent before covering it with spices. No matter how sensitive the bone-eating shamans' noses were, it would be very difficult for them to find him among so many people in the city. Goldie Abao submerged his exhausted body in the scorching hot spring and immediately felt all of his pores moan in comfort. He called out, "Sir, aren't you going to wash up?" Li Qingshan stood beside the hot spring with his hands on his hips. "I'll give you 100 seconds. Once you're clean, get your ass up here. I still have things to do." "What other things?" "I've been chased for so long, so it's about time for me to teach them a lesson. How am I supposed to be the bone-eating shaman's opponent?" Goldie Bao smiled bitterly. His strength had skyrocketed, but he did not lose his head. "Not now, but you'll be tonight." The corner of Li Qingshan's lips curled up. Chapter 723. 50 seconds later, Goldie Bao leapt out of the hot spring, using a new basket to carry Li Qingshan on his back. The threat of death and his desire to become stronger drove him on. Find a larger courtyard and buy as many livestock as you can from the market. You'll deal with the problem of money. Also, find out where the people of Blackwater Cave are right now. Understood? Understood. Goldie Bao began to run around the city, borrowing a great sum of money to buy a courtyard and livestock in such a short amount of time was not an easy task, but he had been a merchant for many years. He had a wide network of contacts. He arrived at a casino and found an old friend. Using the golden name of Goldie Fort, he borrowed a great sum of money. When he expressed his eagerness, this old friend increased the interest to an insane level, doubling it every month. Goldie Bao frowned and agreed through gritted teeth. Now was not the time to get hung up on this. As long as he survived the current crisis and became a powerful shaman, he would have plenty of real money. It would be very easy for him to go back on his word. He also asked this old friend about the whereabouts of the people of Blackwater Cave. Sure enough, they had left the fragrant flower market 2 days ago and returned to Blackwater Cave. Li Qingshan was not disappointed. Even if he obtained the Azura field now, he would not be able to refine it and use it, so he was in no hurry to take it back. All he needed to do was know where it was. After defeating the bone-eating tribe tonight, they would retreat in the face of difficulty. By then, he planned on resting here for a while. Once he recovered some of his strength, going to Blackwater Cave to retrieve the Azura field would be as easy as pie. Afterwards, he made a beeline for the market and bought all the living creatures he could see. Of course, that was apart from people. There were also places in the city that sold slaves. Goldie Bao did not mind eating people, but the price of slaves was rather high. It was not worth it. Noon arrived. In a remote courtyard in the west of the city, the sounds of various livestock rang out. Horses neighed, donkeys neighed, sheep bleated, and cows mooed. There were even a dozen or so of the sturdy pack animals whose names he did not know. "Please do it as soon as possible, sir," Goldie Bao said impatiently. His face was flushed. In the past, he would never have thought that he could become a powerful shaman just by spending money on some livestock. Such an opportunity was not easy to come by. Li Qingshan stood under the eaves. His small body seemed to have grown a little taller. His red hair had already covered his ears, and sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves. His eyes were slightly closed, and his eyelashes were very long. He completely ignored the cries of the various animals and Goldie Bao's voice. Goldie Bao urged, "Sir, do you think you're lucky to have met me?" Li Qingshan turned around and grinned, showing his white teeth and 2 sharp tusks. He was showing his talent for the first time. "Of course, if not for my lord, I would already be dead. I will use my life to repay my lord's kindness. There might be some danger tonight." Li Qingshan's ruby-like scarlet eyes seemed to pierce through time and see the future. "I'm not afraid of danger," Goldie Bao said resolutely. It wasn't that he wasn't afraid of danger, but he knew that Lord Moon needed him now, so he wouldn't put him in too much danger. Could it be that he couldn't escape as well? Yeah, Devouring the life force of a bone-eating shaman is much better than devouring these animals. It's much better than devouring these animals. Fortune comes from danger. Goldie Abau said, "I'll definitely get my revenge tonight." Then let's begin. The sun gradually set in the west, and the cries of the animals in the courtyard gradually grew sparse before dying off completely in the end. At dusk, Goldie Abau stood among a pile of corpses. His face was filled with excitement. He was a head taller than before, at the very least, without a single wrinkle on his face. His hair had all turned black, and his muscles swelled up like they were about to explode. He possessed explosive power in his body, too. Bury the corpses and get used to your power. Prepare to face the enemy. Yes. Night fell, and the noisy, fragrant flower market quietened down. Apart from a few brothels, it was all dark. The stars shone resplendently, flickering silently. There were still a few groups of guards patrolling the city walls, but they all yawned lazily. The safety of the fragrant flower market did not depend on them. Their greatest role was to discover fires in the city in time. Soon after a group of guards passed by, a few black figures leapt onto the city walls, directly leaping into the city. The high wall was practically non-existent to them. Before long, all of the bone-eating shamans had snuck in. "Chief, the entire city is filled with his aura. What do we do?" This place was not like the forest. There were far too many humans here, and their auras were mixed up. Coupled with the various spices and smells, tracking him down was very troublesome. Split up and search. You can't wash away his original smell. The bone-eating chieftain gave an order, and the shamans dispersed to search. The fragrant flower market was not large. There were only 4 main streets, distributed in a triangular shape. With the sensitive sense of smell of the bone-eating shamans, they could search through the entire area with around 100 people. As long as they were close enough, even spices could not conceal the smell of the body. A bone-eating shaman walked through a gloomy alleyway. Suddenly, he stopped and wrinkled his nose. Within the heavy fragrance, there was a familiar smell, and he could not help but smile viciously. The smell rapidly approached him, and a gust of wind swept over his head. Goldie Abau lunged over and pressed down firmly on the bone-eating shaman. The bone-eating shaman let out a deep growl. That was the sound of a hunter discovering prey. It was so deep that it did not alarm too many people, but it was enough for the bone-eating shamans to hear clearly. They did not want to alarm the Fragrant Flower clan in the Fragrant Flower market either. All of the bone-eating shamans heard the disturbance and gathered over rapidly. They only needed a while to tear Goldie Abau to pieces. Goldie Abau was covered in cold sweat. His blood seemed to freeze and condense too. He could not help but become afraid. This was a bone-eating shaman that had eaten an entire group of merchants. Although he had become much stronger now, killing a bone-eating shaman was definitely not an easy feat. Li Qingshan stuck his head out of the basket and pressed his hand against the bone-eating shaman's head when the bone-eating shamans arrived. All that was left on the ground was a withered corpse. After inspecting it, the bone-eating shaman priest said, "His life force has been drained dry." That's an extremely strange method. It's no wonder that Barbarian from Goldie Fort is growing stronger and stronger. It's all because of that baby. At this moment, another growl rang out in the distance. Rushing over to take a look, there was another bone-eating shaman corpse on the ground. Before long, 3 bone-eating shamans had been reduced to withered corpses. As power surged into his body, Goldie Abau's fear turned into rapture. Under Li Qingshan's orders, he moved through the streets and alleyways. His blood boiled and burned. The bone-eating shamans that had once filled him with fear had now become his prey. All he had to do was wait for the next bone-eating shaman to appear before him, and he would lunge over. In the beginning, all he could do was remain in a stalemate, waiting for Li Qingshan to kill them, but now he directly suppressed them. If it were not for the sake of devouring their life force, he could even directly kill some weaker bone-eating shamans. Li Qingshan's senses could completely overwhelm the bone-eating tribe, grasping their movements extremely clearly. He could even tell who was strong and who was weak. Finding their weak points and taking them down one by one was basically as easy as pie. In the beginning, there was still some risk, but as Goldie Bao grew stronger and stronger, the risk became smaller and smaller. The bone-eating shaman priest said, "Chief, gather everyone." The bone-eating chieftain was furious. Just how many years had it been since he suffered like this? He let out a strange growl and gathered all the bone-eating shamans over. Li Qingshan ordered Goldie Bao to stop and maintain his distance from them. If they gathered together, they would not be able to search, but if they separated, they would only be ambushed. The outcome was already set in stone. However, he let out a gentle sigh. The real game had only just begun. At this moment, the bone-eating shaman priest's sunken, hoarse voice drifted over with the night breeze. "Barbarian, you've killed our clansmen. Aren't you afraid of revenge? Hand over the baby, and we'll spare your life. Otherwise, we'll slaughter everyone in Goldie Fort. Your parents, brothers, wives, children, and clansmen will all die, and they'll all die in excruciating pain." The voice was not loud, but it was extremely clear in the quiet city. Goldie Bao's hearing had already become extremely sharp, so his face immediately changed. All of his joy vanished. Although Goldie Fort was watched over by the shaman priest, it definitely could not stop the bone-eating tribe from mobilizing in full strength. Li Qingshan thought, sure enough, all the bad people in the world are basically the same. They can't deal with you, so they'll use the people around you to threaten you. When Goldie Bao embarked on the path of opposing the bone-eating tribe, this was a problem he would definitely face. You don't have to be afraid of him. He's very weak right now. He's not your opponent. Hand him over to us, and you won't have to worry about any revenge. I'll give you 10 seconds to consider. If you don't respond, we'll turn around and go to Goldie Fort right now. 10. The bone-eating shaman priest's voice rose and fell, filled with strange temptation and pressure. "Sarayu, what do we do?" Goldie Bao said with difficulty, but he also understood that if he really had the ability to kill this group of bone-eating shamans, there would be no need for him to launch a sneak attack at all. Li Qingshan said calmly, "There's nothing we can do right now. We still don't have the power to face them openly right now, but you better think it through. You've killed their people, so will they really spare you and your clansmen? If it weren't for you, why would I? If it weren't for me, you'd be dead already. It's not like I'm the one who wants to kill your clansmen, either." Li Qingshan interrupted him and shook his head. He was still a merchant after all. If he were a warrior, he would definitely fight to the end and use threats against threats. His several decades as a merchant had made him even more shrewd than regular barbarians, making him understand how to go with the flow and avoid harm, but it had also made him lose his bravery. "Sorry, I've misspoken," Li Qingshan said. "There's no need to apologize. I understand your difficulties. You've chosen your own path. If you want to sell me out, I won't hate you." At this moment, the bone-eating shaman priest had already reached 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. "All right, I'll hand him over to you. You're not allowed to come over, or I'll kill him, and you won't get anything. You must swear in the name of your ancestors that you will never harm me or my clansmen." Chapter 724. "Sarayu, I'm sorry. If it's just my life, it's nothing even if I give it to you. I still have my elders and children to take care of. There are over 1,000 clansmen in Goldie Fort. I can't let them all die in my hands." The stars blinked coldly, unable to illuminate the messy alleyway. Goldie Abow's eyes widened, staring at the basket on the ground. Who knew whether he was afraid of being attacked, or afraid he would escape, or perhaps both? His face was filled with unease, but there was also an inexplicable excitement. He had already carefully considered the pros and cons. He was already powerful enough right now. It would be no problem even if he returned to Goldie Fort and became the chieftain. He could spend the majority of his remaining life slowly enjoying everything he had obtained from this day and night. He had already made a huge profit from this deal, so it was time for him to stop. If he was too greedy, he would suffer losses. He was not afraid of the bone-eating tribe falling out with him. The bone-eating tribe revered their ancestors very much. When shamans in the tribe were close to dying of old age, they would not be cremated or buried. Instead, they would share their flesh and blood with their clansmen. Just like that, it would be passed down from generation to generation. If they swore an oath in the name of their ancestors, they would never go against it. There's no need for you to explain any further. I've already said that I understand. Li Qingshan climbed out of the basket, straightened his body, and made his way towards a small alleyway on the side. You can't go. Goldie Abow blocked his way. This was the most important bargaining chip for him to survive from the hands of the bone-eating tribe. Li Qingshan's calm attitude made him feel deeply uneasy, but he immediately comforted himself. If he had any tricks up his sleeves, he would have used them a long time ago. He's definitely just putting on a show right now. I can't be frightened by him. That's not something you can decide. You can decide your own path, but you can't decide the path of others. Have you noticed that? They haven't responded to you. Li Qingshan turned his head and listened attentively, raising an index finger. A sliver of panic flashed across Goldie Abow's face. He called out, "Hurry up and swear an oath, or don't even think about obtaining him." He extended his huge hand and reached towards Li Qingshan. Suddenly, he stiffened in the air, unable to move. Goldie Abow's eyes bulged, staring straight at Li Qingshan. He wanted to say, "What did you do? Did you really think that I didn't make any preparations and dared to raise the dog so ferociously? I was the one who personally injected that life energy into your body. Do you think they should listen to you or me? Someone once told me that the power given to you by others is never your own power. Since you regret it, then let everything go back to the original track." Li Qingshan shook his head helplessly. He extended his hand and gently patted Goldie Abow's calf. Goldie Abow felt his body grow hotter and hotter. His blood seemed to be boiling and burning. Waves of energy were rampaging around him, and the pain was unbearable. However, he was unable to move, and a pleading look appeared in his eyes. If he had known that Li Qingshan had such means, he would not have betrayed him at all. His parents were already old. Although his wife and children were important, as long as he was alive, he could still marry and have children. Everything would be gone. You've already chosen your path, and you can't regret it. I understand your choice, and you should understand me too. Want a man to sell your treasure. You saved my life, and now I'm ready to betray you at any time. Of course, you'll be very unhappy. Listen, they're here. After they kill you, they'll probably spare your clansmen. Let's hope so. Goodbye, Abow. Li Qingshan plucked a strand of hair and turned it into a tiny set of clothes. He shoved his hand into his pocket and passed by Goldie Abow, waving his hand without even looking back. He made his way into the depths of the alleyway, leaping over a stone wall gracefully and leaping into a residence. On the other side of the stone wall, the bone-eating chieftain rushed past in a hurry, completely unaware that the target he was pursuing was only a single wall away. Li Qingshan smiled. His current constitution had already completely surpassed that of mortals. Leaping over walls posed no problem at all, and with his senses, he could avoid all danger beforehand. Even if the bone-eating shaman's senses of smell and spiritual senses were 10 times sharper, they would not be able to discover his existence. There was no longer any danger for him to move around alone. This was not an uninhabited forest. The bone-eating tribe was unable to search carefully, and very soon the Fragrant Flower clan would come to chase them away. The bone-eating shamans gathered over from all directions. Seeing how Goldia Bao stood there without moving at all, they were afraid it was a trap, so they slowly approached him. They were filled with bone-deep hatred towards the murderer of their clansmen. Goldia Bao was filled with regret, everything he went through during the day, and night was like a strange, motley dream. Now that he had woken up from the dream, he felt like he had returned to that evening yesterday. Death approached him, and he was powerless to resist. Suddenly, he understood the meaning behind Li Qingshan's words. Since you've regretted it, then let everything return to its original trajectory. According to the original trajectory, he would die in the mouths of the bone-eating tribe. No, I don't want to die. Goldia Bao roared inside. His eyes became bloodshot and scarlet red, and his consciousness gradually blurred. His heartbeat was as dense as a drum, as if it was about to burst out of his chest and leap out of his body. His bones creaked, and his skin turned scarlet red. His body swelled up, actually growing another foot taller. The color of his skin changed a few times before becoming an earthen yellow in the end, rough like the skin of a pack animal. Snake scales grew on his neck, and goat horns grew on his head. His nose became especially large, stretching out his facial features. Various animal characteristics appeared on his body, making him even stranger and more twisted than the bone-eating shamans. Chief, the basket is empty. The baby has vanished. A bone-eating shaman kicked the basket. The bone-eating chieftain frowned and asked, Shaman priest, what's going on? The bone-eating shaman priest studied Goldia Bao. Looks like it's the baby's doing. What a good move. The power in his body has lost control. Oh no, kill him. A furious roar rushed into the air, echoing through the entire Fragrant Flower market. Li Qingshan glanced back and said gently, Since you like to court death so much, then go die. Afterwards, he continued on his way, crossing over wall after wall. His destination was actually the Fragrant Flower market. Boom! Goldia Bao swung his hand, and a bone-eating shaman flew out, smashing through 3 walls consecutively. Blood flowed from all his orifices, and his body twisted. He was no longer alive. A few bone-eating shamans lunged over, biting and tearing at him with their claws and teeth. Goldia Bao grabbed one and ripped it apart forcefully, scattering a rain of blood. The blood and pain made him even more frenzied. He swung his arms about, wildly, ripping the bone-eating shamans to pieces in just a few moves. The bone-eating shaman priest's cane thumped against the ground, and the 2 empty eye sockets of the withered head at the top sprayed out with black smoke, shooting towards Goldia Bao's back. With a hiss, his flesh and blood were corroded, so deep that bones were visible. Goldia Bao's roars became even more hysterical. He completely ignored the wounds on his back and lunged towards the bone-eating shaman priest. Chapter 725. Goldia Bao grabbed the 2 bone-eating shamans and swung them around madly like weapons, constantly letting out meaningless roars and bellows. Walls shattered one after another, and residences collapsed loudly. Cries rose and fell. Just like how a single person risked his life, even 10 people would struggle to stop him. With the bone-eating shamans around him, they were like a pack of wolves surrounding a furious black bear. Their sharp teeth and claws struggled to do anything, The slightest carelessness could lead to a single insta-kill. All of you back up. I'll stop him. The bone-eating chieftain bellowed out. His eyes basically spat fire when he realized this was the end of the chase. Clang, 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 clang. The urgent sound of gongs and drums rang out from the city walls. The guards called out loudly, "The bone-eating barbarians are here! The bone-eating barbarians are here!" Countless people roused from their sleep. The entire fragrant flower market was completely alarmed. At this moment, Li Qingshan had already arrived before the fragrant flower market. The square was brightly lit, filled with a hubbub of voices. A while later, there was a rumble, and the door opened. A group of people hurried over to where the battle had taken place. In the lead was a beautiful woman with a pretty face. Behind her were all women too, both young women and old women. Li Qingshan had heard from Goldie of Bao that the Fragrant Flower tribe was a matriarchal clan. The people in charge were all women. This aspect was very similar to the night roamers, and the reason was basically the same. The cultivation methods passed down in the tribe were more suitable for women to practice. In this world, the strong obviously had the final say. The beautiful woman in the lead sensed something. She turned her gaze, casting it into the gloomy alleyway, but she saw nothing. She could not afford to think too much about it. She became worried inside. The bone-eating tribe has actually snuck into the city at night. Are they going to declare war? Li Qingshan had already leapt over the high walls and entered the fragrant flower market. His footsteps were light and silent, and he passed through the garden swiftly. The people in the market had all been mobilized. The guards had become extremely lax. He made his way straight in and arrived in the central courtyard. There was a steaming hot spring, and there was a large fake mountain fountain in the center. An exotic fragrance drifted through the air. Those who can usually bathe here must be people with extremely great status in the Fragrant Flower clan. Perhaps it's the woman I saw earlier. However, he didn't come here to steal a woman. Even if he really wanted to, right now, he was willing but unable. He was choosing a suitable hiding place. If the bone-eating tribe really did reach an agreement with the Fragrant Flower tribe and conduct a large-scale search of the city, they definitely would not be able to find this place. According to his perception, there was a hollow space in the rockery. He jumped into the hot spring. He swam to the bottom of the rockery and found a small cave. The entrance of the cave was only the size of a rubber ball. Ordinary people would not be able to enter, but he was only a foot-long baby now, so he easily entered the cave. Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. After bathing in the hot spring with Goldie, Bao, he found the hot spring to be very nice. The underground river boiled with the flames of the earth, a display of the two powers of the world. It was beneficial for comprehending the fusion of fire and water. Of course, the most important thing was to be comfortable. His body was submerged in the hot spring, and the steam was rising, making him sleepy. He yawned and laid down with his arms as a pillow. He believed that no one would be able to find him here. He just needed to have a good sleep and wait for him to grow up. He gently closed his eyes. Early the next morning, amidst the drifting mist, the fragrant flower market gradually became noisy. Everyone who saw each other was discussing what had happened last night. Just what happened last night. You were sleeping too soundly. The bone-eating barbarians have entered the city. Bone-eating barbarians. Man-eating, bone-eating barbarians? Who else could it be? The battle between the Fragrant Flower clan and the bone-eating barbarians was truly earth-shaking. They only managed to repel the bone-eating barbarians after so much difficulty. Go to the east of the city and take a look. Several dozen houses have all been demolished. Why do I hear there's a monster there? In the fragrant flower market. Are you certain that the monster last night was Goldie, a bough of Goldie Fort, a traveling merchant? Chrysanthemum Fragilis listened to her daughter's report with a frown. Ever since she became the matriarch of the Fragrant Flower clan, it had already been many years since such a great disturbance had occurred in the city. Last night, she almost thought the bone-eating shamans had gone mad and launched a sneak attack on them. But in the end, they ended up fighting a monster for some reason. It was a false alarm. However, the results of the investigation left her in disbelief. The terrifying monster was actually a traveling merchant called Goldie, a bough, a mortal through and through. She had personally witnessed the monster's terror. Before he died, he had even killed a few bone-eating shamans. At the very least, 20 bone-eating shamans had died at his hands. So how could he be immortal? Yes, Mother. Someone saw him enter the city, and he even borrowed a great sum of money to buy a courtyard and many livestock. The courtyard is filled with the corpses of livestock, all of them like they've been drained dry. They're exactly the same as the corpses of the bone-eating shamans. When Xianghua Zi thought of the courtyard filled with corpses, she still felt uncomfortable. It was even more disgusting than rotting, smelly, and blood-soaked. Is this something a mortal can do? Chrysanthemum Fragilis frowned. At the very least, when he came to trade a few days ago, he seemed no different from a mortal. Shamans don't do such lowly work. Perhaps he learnt some powerful shaman art, but he's been hiding his strength the entire time. Why does the bone-eating tribe insist on killing him? I'm not sure about that yet, but the shaman art he uses is similar to the shaman art passed down through the generations of the bone-eating tribe. It's all about directly stealing the life force of others. No, it should be even more ingenious than the bone-eating tribes. Even other wild beasts can become targets. It's very likely that the bone-eating tribe came here to steal this shaman art. In order to avoid being hunted down, he fled back to Fragrant Flower Market, but he had no choice but to absorb too much life force, which is why he became like that. It's also possible that he's determined to perish together with the bone-eating shamans. Humph! Those bone-eating barbarians have gone for wool and come home shorn this time. There's actually such a powerful shaman art in the world. We can't let those barbarians obtain it. Go. Investigate carefully what the traveling merchant from Goldie Fort has been doing these past few days. Who has seen him and what he said? Chrysanthemum Fragilis ordered. She did not waste the opportunity last night either, using the opportunity to launch an attack and heavily injuring the bone-eating chieftain. She even left behind many bone-eating shamans. The bone-eating tribe would need a few years to recover. If there were any wondrous shaman arts, she had to grasp them in her hands. A few days later, Chrysanthemum Fragilis received news that Goldie Bao had sold a wondrous item at a high price in Fragrant Flower Market a few days ago. The wondrous item was shaped like a cloth bag, impervious to damage. She immediately became certain that the item was closely connected to this matter. She ordered her second daughter, Xianghua Zi, go to Blackwater Cave and find the cave master. Buy that item back. What if he refuses to sell it? Then offer an even higher price, so high that he can't refuse or be afraid of it. In the fake hot spring, Li Qingshan's ears twitched, and his lips curled up slightly. He had no idea where Blackwater Cave was, nor did he know who had bought the Azura field. Originally, he found it to be rather troublesome, but it was all good now. Looks like I don't have to go to Blackwater Cave. Chapter 726. Several days later, Chrysanthemum Fragilis obtained what she wanted. She fiddled with the Azura field, constantly releasing her true chi to test it. However, with her strength as a chi practitioner, it was clear that she could not make an arcane treasure react at all. She could not even tell that it was an arcane treasure. That was just too far away from the world she resided in. Mother, just what is this? Xianghua Zi asked curiously. On the way back, she had made guesses the entire way, but she could not figure it out. This item is very extraordinary. It's definitely not something an ordinary person can wield. The secret of the mysterious sorcery should be hidden within. Otherwise, it's better to let your elder sister take a look. Elder sister is thousands of kilometers away, so how can I give it to her? The rules of the White Lotus sect are very strict. I can't have her rush back just for a random item. If mother is useless, it's better to bestow it to me. Xianghua Zi's eyes spun. When it came to her elder sister, Xianghua Hong, even if it was a piece of trash, she would still fight for it. Since you brought it back, you should take it. Chrysanthemum Fragilis considered it. Her elder daughter, Xianghua Hong, was already a disciple of the White Lotus sect. She had a great future ahead of her, so she did not lack this item. In the past few years, it had been her second daughter, Xianghua Zi, who had been running errands for her. Both her hands were flesh, so she could not favor one over the other. After all, her second daughter would enter the White Lotus sect sooner or later. She would eventually be able to unravel the secret of this item and obtain the mysterious sorcery within. Xianghua Zi happily accepted the Azura field. In the hot spring 300 meters away, Li Qingshan closed his eyes in relief. Although he could consider stealing the Azura field right now, the risk was too great, so there was no need. He would have a good sleep, recover 10 to 20% of his strength, and take it in front of everyone. A few hours later, Xianghua Man noticed that her guess was completely wrong. The mysterious shaman art had nothing to do with this flower print bag. She frowned as she looked at the young man in ragged clothes that seemed like a beggar and asked, "You're from Huangliang Beach?" "Why, yes. You're saying that you were ambushed by Goldie, a Bao, and an infant. Everyone died, and you were the only one who escaped? Why would they let you go? And why did you flee back to Fragrant Flower Market instead of Huangliang Beach? Explain everything clearly to me. If there's even a single lie, humph." The young man recounted the nightmarish experience again as he constantly trembled. After Goldie a Bao and Li Qingshan left, he set off as well. His luck was very good. The bone-eating tribe had been drawn away from the main path, allowing him to escape. He spent a few days before fleeing back to the Fragrant Flower Market. He was furious, so he purposefully announced how Goldie a Bao had killed their people in the bustling market. He wanted the various tribes to know what Goldie a Bao was like. However, not long after, he was targeted by the people of the Fragrant Flower clan. After careful questioning, he was brought to the Fragrant Flower house, reported to Xianghua Zi, and finally brought to Chrysanthemum Fragilis. A baby with red hair and red eyes. Is it the fire devourers? Chrysanthemum Fragilis frowned deeply. Xianghua Zi, who was beside her, asked, Zi, has Fragrant Flower City ever seen a baby like this?" Xianghua Zi said, "Definitely not, or I would definitely know about it. That baby is anything but simple. He only used a few days to turn a mortal into such a vicious monster. He might be hiding somewhere. Send people to search carefully. Don't miss a single corner. I'd like to see him." "Yes, mother." "Then what do we do with this kid? Just kill him." Chrysanthemum Fragilis spoke as if she was crushing a bedbug. He was just an insignificant little barbarian anyway. If we let him spread this nonsense, who knows what kind of trouble he'll cause? The flower beds just happen to be in need of some fertilizer. The young man completely failed to respond. A beautiful, noble female matriarch like her actually wanted him dead, so casually. Xianghua Zi clapped her hands, and two bare-chested, sturdy guards immediately walked in. They did not give him the opportunity to beg for mercy or curse at all, cleanly slicing through his neck. With a crack, his neck bone snapped, and they dragged the corpse away. Xianghua Zi ordered people to search through the city, but the result was nothing. Perhaps the baby had already left the fragrant flower market, or perhaps he was already dead, eaten clean by the rats in the gutters. It was also possible that he had been roasted by unscrupulous merchants. Time passed quickly, and Chrysanthemum Fragilis gradually cast this matter to the back of her mind. After who knew how long, Li Qingshan opened his eyes again. The light in his scarlet eyes was withdrawn, and his scarlet hair fell to his shoulders. It had already hardened. As his body grew, the space in the fake mountain became rather narrow. He glanced at his hand that had grown much larger, smiled, and clenched it firmly. He no longer felt so weak and powerless. He exhaled deeply. He had finally recovered some strength. He could go out and do some things he needed to do. He sucked in another deep breath, but it was not just air that gushed into his mouth. There was also surging spiritual qi of the world. Under the impetus of the spiritual qi, the demon core began to spin slowly. Although he had only recovered to the realm of demons, he could already use three abilities, which were the spirit turtle's profound shell, the tremors of the ox demon, and the tiger demon's breath. Of course, theoretically, there was also the phoenix's nerva, but he probably could not use it a second time in his current state. But that was enough. Li Qingshan strode over. Before the rocks of the fake mountain could even touch his skin, they were all reduced to dust. His usage of the power of tremors was becoming more and more flexible. Ah! A woman's cry rang out by his ear. She was nearby. Li Qingshan smiled. He could see the person he wanted to see as soon as he woke up, and he could even enjoy some benefits. As it seemed, after so many days of bad luck, his luck was finally turning for the better. Apart from cultivating, the thing that Chrysanthemum Fragilis loved to do the most was soak in the hot spring. The large hot spring in the courtyard was designed for her alone. Apart from her, no one was allowed to pollute the water, or only death awaited them. They would be buried in the flower beds and used as fertilizer. Beautiful purple and red flower petals floated on the surface of the water. She was standing comfortably in the water, her graceful figure faintly discernible in the mist. Her hands were gently caressing her delicate skin, plump and smooth lower abdomen. Although she already had 3 daughters, she was still able to make any man go crazy. Not only was she a beauty, but she was also the matriarch of the Fragrant Flower clan, who stood above all but one. She was very satisfied with her life, but just as she was admiring herself, she suddenly felt the surface of the water ripple. The fake mountain trembled slightly, and the surging spiritual qi of the world surged into it madly, as if something was trying to break free. Even though she was experienced and knowledgeable, she couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. However, she immediately calmed down, and true qi coiled around her hands. She stared fixedly at the fake mountain. "What is it? Come out!" Just as she finished speaking, a figure walked out from the fake mountain. At first glance, it was only a child about 5 or 6 years old. His red hair hung down to his shoulders, and his face was handsome. There was an innocent smile on his face, revealing 2 small canine teeth. He didn't seem to be the least bit threatening. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that his forehead was slightly bulging. His 10 fingernails were not ordinary nails, but rather sharp claws. His pair of crimson-red eyes were incomparably deep. His gaze seemed to have substance as it swept across her naked body. His gaze was filled with aggression, and it was definitely not the gaze of a child. "Who are you?" Li Qingshan's response was a frivolous whistle, but when he glanced at his own reflection, it turned into a sigh. Chrysanthemum Fragilis leapt over to the edge of the pool. She picked up her clothes and twirled them around, wrapping them around herself. She stared at Li Qingshan coldly, and suddenly found him rather familiar. Her heart skipped a beat. Scarlet hair and scarlet eyes. Don't tell me. Didn't they say he was an infant? Li Qingshan asked with a crisp, childish voice. I have 2 questions for you. First, where is your daughter? The one you sent to Blackwater Cave a few days ago. The second question is, before he had even finished speaking, a fragrant gust of wind assaulted him. Chrysanthemum Fragilis had struck out with a palm strike from afar. A hexagonal spirit turtle's profound shell flew out automatically, blocking the attack. However, the fragrance permeated Li Qingshan's surroundings. He wrinkled his nose. How fragrant! Since it's fragrant, then smell some more. Chrysanthemum Fragilis giggled gently and struck out with her palms strike again and again. Bang, bang, bang. Pillars of water rose up from the hot spring, and all the steam was swept away, all blocked by the spirit turtle's profound shell. Li Qingshan stepped over the water and made his way towards her steadily. You better stop right now, or I'll teach you a vicious lesson. Humph, how do you want to teach me a lesson? I'll spank your bottom first. If it really doesn't work, I'll spank your face. If there really isn't any other way, I'll just kill you. Really? Just because you're a brat who hasn't even grown hair yet? I'd like to have a son like you. Come, call me mother. Chrysanthemum Fragilis shivered inside. She was quite powerful among shamans, but she was not as powerful as those who had undergone the heavenly tribulation. She actually could not get through the thin defense. But no matter how powerful you are, you'll be at my mercy later. The fragrance grew heavier and heavier. She had already activated the fragrant flower goo in her body. The wind from her palm strike contained many tiny specks of pollen. As long as someone came in contact with it, they would definitely become limp and powerless, completely at her mercy, let alone directly inhale it. Do you know what it means to curse someone without exposing their shortcomings? If I don't beat you up until you call me father, I'll write my name backwards. With a flash, Li Qingshan appeared before Chrysanthemum Fragilis and casually slapped her flat abdomen. It was not that he wanted to act like a hooligan, but he was limited by his height. Chrysanthemum Fragilis did not fly away. Instead, she shuddered and directly collapsed on the ground. She felt every single bone in her body tremble, and the true chi in her dantian had been shaken to pieces. She had clearly inhaled his pollen, yet there was no response at all. She immediately understood the unimaginably great disparity between their strength. Actually, from the perspective of cultivation alone, Li Qingshan had only just condensed his demon core. If it were many years ago when he had just condensed his demon core, even if he could defeat Chrysanthemum Fragilis, it would still be a bitter struggle. It would never be as easy as it was now. During the past few days of hiding in the fake mountain, he did not just sleep. Instead, he focused all of his attention on his body, balancing these 4 completely different powers. He had already begun to see results. Right now, he was more than 10 times stronger than when he had just become a demon, and just a casual strike from him contained many years of battle experience. His grasp of timing and control over his strength were all extremely exquisite. How could the leader of a small tribe in the wilderness be his opponent? The second question is, where is the bone-eating tribe? Chapter 727. Chrysanthemum Fragilis said, "Why are you looking for the bone-eating tribe? I'm going to invite them to tea. What's that got to do with you? Anyway, if you don't answer these two questions, I'll first kill you, then kill you. This place is so big anyway, so there's bound to be someone who knows." Xianghua Man's heart tightened, though his threat was close to a joke, and the appearance of a child could only be called cute and not terrifying. It was precisely this kind of disrespectful attitude that caused her to recall how she normally treated those mortals. That was how she didn't take her life seriously at all. If she were to infuriate him today, she would probably really be met with a fatal disaster. He revealed an amiable smile. "Little Dee, Li Qingshan squinted his eyes. "Are you mocking me?" "And I'm not." Immediately, Chrysanthemum Fragilis felt like she was suffocating. The person crouching beside her did not seem like a child, but a vicious monster. Sure enough, people like that were temperamental. "I'll teach you how to address me first. Do you still remember what I said earlier?" Li Qingshan flipped Chrysanthemum Fragilis over and slapped her on the bottom. "Father!" Before the slap had even landed, Chrysanthemum Fragilis cried out. "You barbarians really don't have any backbone at all. Fine, you win. Now answer my question." Li Qingshan was taken aback before smacking her on the head. Chrysanthemum Fragilis sucked in a deep breath and said, "Seriously, it's best if you don't kill me. Who's the backer of our Fragrant Flower clan?" "The White Lotus sect. Since you know about the White Lotus sect, you should know about the White Lotus Mother and the Black Lotus cult leader. Both of them are important figures who have undergone the second heavenly tribulation. If you kill me, they won't spare you. If you were the White Lotus Mother, I'd leave right now, but it's a pity that you're the damned leader of a barbarian tribe. You're not even a disciple of the White Lotus sect." Li Qingshan sneered. If he had a little more time, once his strength completely recovered, he would even be able to wipe out the White Lotus sect alone without any pressure. Why would he be afraid of a threat like that? Chrysanthemum Fragilis's heart sank. He actually did not even take the White Lotus sect seriously, and he knew everything about her. He had been hiding in the fake mountain for so long, so he had probably heard all of her secrets. "Let's play a game. The rule of the game is that you're not allowed to mention the words White Lotus Society. There was once a guy who used his boss to threaten me, so I told him not to mention his boss anymore. I hate being threatened." He mentioned it again, so I slapped him across the face and sent him to the next world. "Oh, this guy's strength is around the White Lotus Mothers and Lotus." "Yes." Chrysanthemum Fragilis nodded in a hurry, but she did not believe him at all. Someone on the same level as the White Lotus Mother was already unimaginably powerful, so just what kind of existence would his boss be? "Do you really think I've grown up scared? If you understand, then get your daughter to come over immediately. My second daughter, Aziz, has already arrived." Chrysanthemum Fragilis snorted gently. "What's wrong with you? You won't let me say those 3 words. She's gone to the White Lotus sect. What's she doing?" "She's already become a disciple of the White Lotus sect." Chrysanthemum Fragilis responded extremely quickly. "Don't tell me he's come for that wondrous item of unknown use?" "What?" "Write a letter and tell her to come back. New disciples are forbidden from contacting the outside world for 3 years. Li Qingshan kicked Chrysanthemum Fragilis. "I wonder if she'll come back to attend your funeral if you die. I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, you're welcome to ask someone else. If I'm lying, I'm willing to die. I can tell you where she is." Li Qingshan sat down on Chrysanthemum Fragilis and leaned on his hand, sighing. "And here I thought my luck had turned for the better. Whatever, I'll just treat it as switching from Blackwater Cave to the White Lotus sect. Anyway, I'll have to pay a visit." A strange scene appeared next to the hot spring. A voluptuous, beautiful woman was lying on the ground. Although she was wearing a muslin dress, it was soaked by the steam and was almost naked. A 5 or 6-year-old child was sitting on top of her, sighing in distress. You should know where the bone-eating tribe is, right? Li Qingshan decided to get revenge first. He was in no hurry to find the Azura field. It was not like he could use an arcane treasure with his current cultivation anyway. I know. Let me go, and I'll bring the map over. Chrysanthemum Fragilis beamed inside. As long as she could send away this wretch, anything could be discussed. Afterwards, she immediately reported this to the White Lotus sect. The best outcome would be to perish together with the bone-eating barbarians. Humph, the bone-eating tribe isn't that easy to infiltrate. If you want to die, that's up to you. Why are you looking for a map? Just bring me there. I'll take you there? No, Chrysanthemum Fragilis turned him down in a hurry, but when she met Li Qingshan's scarlet eyes, she was unable to say anything else. Right now, the enemy was powerful while she was weak, so there was no room for her to turn him down. I can take you there. Can you let me put on some clothes? No problem. Li Qingshan stood up. Chrysanthemum Fragilis arrived beside a clothes rack and took off her wet clothes first before slowly putting them back on. She racked her brains anxiously for a plan. What do I do? Run. She glanced at the child who squatted beside the hot spring and played with the water, and she immediately dismissed this thought. He was not by her side, which meant he was not afraid of her running away. Call for reinforcements to attack. She would probably be killed before reinforcements could even arrive. Hurry up. I'll give you 5 seconds. Li Qingshan held a ball of water in his left hand and a ball of fire in his right before combining them, merging the water and fire. Under his current state, the spirit turtle and phoenix were both equivalent to the first layer. This was the first time the two powers had truly achieved equilibrium. Water and fire supported each other, reinforcing and countering each other. He felt an unprecedented harmony. The tiger demon and ox demon had both become docile. Chrysanthemum Fragilis made her way over in a hurry and smiled. The journey is long, sir. Why don't you eat something first before setting off? Our Fragrant Flower House's fragrant flower wine is renowned for its fragrance, and we have various delicacies too. Li Qingshan pursed his lips. He was rather tempted. It must have been a very long time since he had eaten. The taste in his mouth was almost bland, although he no longer needed to eat to survive now. This was one of the great joys of life. Food and lust were part of human nature. He could not do anything about lust right now, so he could only start with food first. Since he was traveling, he obviously had to try the delicacies of various places. Don't waste time. Once we return from destroying the bone-eating tribe, you can slowly serve me, Chrysanthemum Fragilis called out. But if the two of us go to the bone-eating tribe, we'll be heading to our deaths. Please let me gather people. I'm willing to assist you in your crusade against the bone-eating tribe. Sir, don't worry. You won't have to do anything when the time comes. You can just watch from one side. I'm the most generous person. As long as you take me over, there'll be even more benefits for you when the time comes. Chrysanthemum Fragilis did not want this benefit, and she even wanted to turn it down. Li Qingshan said indifferently, "If you really don't want to go, I won't force you." "I'll go." 2 hours later, the two of them silently left the fragrant flower market on the pack beast. In order to fool others, the pack beast was only a regular pack beast. It moved slowly, but this method was the most efficient when it came to long journeys. Li Qingshan had plenty of time right now. If he traveled for a few more days, he could recover a little more strength. He sat at the front comfortably, resting his head between two plump mounds. A fragrance lingered in the air as he admired the scenery of the Mist Province along the way. It was quite an enjoyable experience. Chrysanthemum Fragilis was not in such a good mood, and she spoke even more carefully than she did in the fragrant flower market. She trembled in fear, afraid that she would anger him with something. She did not want to die outside for no reason at all. 8 days later. "Hee, you little pervert, you're touching me again. I don't have any breast milk for you. If you touch me, I'll touch you too." Chrysanthemum Fragilis giggled and extended her hand into Li Qingshan's clothes, feeling around until she reached below. This was not the Ichuan courtyard or the brothel. Instead, it was the Mist Province's rainforest that was rife with danger, on the back of a wooden pack beast. Chrysanthemum Fragilis fawned over him, and Li Qingshan was not a cold-blooded person either. In just 7 or 8 days, he had already gotten used to her. On the surface, he already seemed like an adulterer, but the adulterer was a little young. "Let go of me," Li Qingshan said helplessly. In the beginning, he thought she was purposefully fawning over him, but he never thought this woman would actually become addicted to him over the past few days. She would kiss and touch him whenever she had the opportunity. It was no longer clear who was taking advantage of who, but he felt like he was losing out a little, especially when his private parts had been grabbed. He's still too young. Who knows when he'll grow up a little? Chrysanthemum Fragilis giggled. She had also understood that Li Qingshan was clear-headed. Made it through the gaps. He would not lose his temper over a small scattering joke like bits of gold. Only at a time like this we're about to enter helplessness and let out a sigh of relief. "Let's go on foot and sneak over." She found it even more Chrysanthemum Fragilis pulled on the tiger's bottom and made the pack definitely stop. Make you taste its power in the future. "Let's keep advancing." Li Qingshan said, "I've come for revenge, not to steal. I can't wait any longer." Apart from what I've said, you better grow up faster. Still have other tricks. Chrysanthemum Fragilis was he was still already so cute. If the child in her arms could not defeat the bone-eating tribe, when he grew up, she would not be able to escape from the bone-eating tribe's pursuit. Instead, cut the nonsense. She realized Li Qingshan had no intention of harming her, so she did not feel as much hostility anymore. Eyes flickered. She actually began to enjoy this kissed Li Qingshan's lips. Thrilling journey. After a series of French kisses, they traveled for another day. Li Qingshan pushed her away. Nights. This was the first time she discovered the forest was sexually harassed could be such a troublesome matter. Chrysanthemum Fragilis licked her lips reluctantly. With a shake of the reins, the pack animal advanced slowly. After walking for a while, the sound of rustling came from the forest. Black shadows moved back and forth. The pack beast stopped its footsteps restlessly. No matter how Xianghua Man shook the reins, it was unwilling to take another step forward. Chapter 7:28. The bone-eating tribe that countless barbarians treated as a land of death seemed no different from any other stronghold in nature. It did not give off an evil, bloody aura. The bamboo buildings constructed from verdant bamboo instead gave off quite the ambience, which made Li Qingshan think of Cloud Wisp Island. However, the people who emerged from the bamboo buildings were bone-eating shamans that seemed inhuman. There were men and women, large and small, but they were all vicious. Bone-eating shamans began eating humans from a young age to increase their strength. The children who could not practice shaman arts through cannibalism would become food for other shamans. There were many children like that. So although there was basically no pressure to survive, the bone-eating tribe had never been particularly large. They were not like regular shaman tribes, which still developed with shamans as the core and mortals as the foundation. The jungle behind them rustled, and several dozen shamans emerged, surrounding the two people on the pack animal. Chrysanthemum Fragilis, how dare you come to my place? Do you really think I'm afraid of eating you just because you have the White Lotus sect? The bone-eating chieftain stared at Chrysanthemum Fragilis on the pack animal in hatred, extending his long, scarlet tongue and licking his claws. He could still clearly remember the losses he suffered in the fragrant
With a series
flower
of
market.
cracks,
Chrysanthemum
7 or 8 of them
Fragilises fell off the bamboo
trembled
building together.
slightly.
None of them
She
actually managed to see what kind of
tightened
attack
her
Li
embrace of Li
Qingshan had
Qingshan
used to
and
attack
sneered.
them.
I've
Li
come today to
Qingshan
claim
leapt
your
off the bamboo
lives.
building and
The
landed in the
bone-eating
densest
chieftain
area of
laughed
the
madly.
bone-eating shamans.
And the bone-eating
He
shamans
shuttled around
all snickered strangely
and
too.
unleashed the power
Only
of
the
tremors
bone-eating
at
shaman
will. Priest who
as long
arrived
as he
afterwards
touched
frowned
the bodies
firmly,
of the bone,
his gaze
eating
landing
shamans
on Li
gently,
Qingshan. Their bones
Boy,
would
so
shatter.
you're their leader.
In the blink of an eye,
Li Qingshan
a
broke
swathe of the
free
bone
from
eating
Chrysanthemum
shaman's
Fragilis's
collapsed.
embrace
After reaching
and
a
stood
certain
on the
level
pack
of
animal's
skill,
head,
it could
pointing at the
completely
bone-eating
become
chieftain
overwhelming
and
power.
yelling.
The
Be
bone-eating
careful.
chieftain said,
He is demonic
"How
arts.
bold of you,
Don't
kid,
touch him.
to actually speak
But
to me like that.
if they did not
Your
touch
flesh
him,
sure, how were they
seems
supposed
very
to capture
tender.
him?
I'll
The
make it
bone-eating
perfect for
shamans
eating you raw
all retreated,
and drinking later.
although they possessed a
Li
murderous
Qingshan
nature
smiled.
that did not fear
You've
death.
chased me for so
They
long,
had no
yet
idea what
you
to
don't
do
even know who
when
I
faced
am.
with an opponent like that.
I'm chasing you?
He really is
The
strong
bone-eating
enough.
chieftain
Chrysanthemum
was filled with doubt.
Fragilis was
Chief,
overjoyed.
he's that infant.
The
The
bone-eating
bone-eating
shamans
shaman
who
priest
originally
arrived
surrounded
beside
the
her
bone-eating
eagerly
chieftain
all
with his
had their
cane
attention
and
drawn
said with
away
a
by
deep,
him.
hoarse
How could she
voice,
let go of an
"It's you."
opportunity?
The
like
bone-eating
this?
chieftain
With
was
a bellow,
mildly taken aback.
she swung her
and his
palm
laughter
and
became
powered the
even
fragrant
louder.
flower goo.
A
Right.
fragrant breeze
Thank you for your protection.
drifted through the
Ancestor,
air. The pack
I've been
animal
looking for
beneath
you
him
for so
directly
long,
collapsed
yet
to the
you've
ground.
delivered
While the
yourself to me
shamans
today.
nearby tottered
I
on the
didn't
verge
think
of
there'd be
collapse
something
too.
so good
The
in the world.
bone-eating
Do
shaman
you know that
priest's
the
cane
bone-eating
paused,
tribe
and the
lost
shriveled
several
head at the
dozen
top
clansmen
opened its
because of
empty
you?
eye sockets.
Their voices were filled
Two
with
wisps of
bone-deep
black
hatred,
smoke
as if
twisted
Li
together,
Qingshan had
turning
committed
into
a
the
grave
shape of a
mistake
two-headed
by
snake
not
that
obediently
bit
giving
towards
himself to
Chrysanthemum
them.
Fragilis.
Li Qingshan
Chrysanthemum
sneered and shook
Fragilis
his head,
slapped
No,
the
no,
snake's
no.
head away
Not
with a
40.
palm strike.
He paused
She
for a
refused
moment.
to continue
All
fighting,
of them.
leaping
Capture
backwards.
Kill
The
him.
bone-eating
Kill him.
chieftain
Don't hold
roared
back.
furiously. The
Several
bone-eating chieftain
hundred
bellowed
bone-eating
out
shamans
and charged
surged
towards
over
Li
together,
Qingshan,
letting out
at the
furious
very
roars that
His
sounded
colossal
like the
body
wails of
was like a
ghosts
speeding chariot,
and the howls of wolves.
He threw a punch.
It was quite
and the
a harrowing
wind
disturbance.
whistled like a
Chrysanthemum
cannonball had been
Fragilis
fired.
paled.
Li Qingshan
stood
leapt
where
up
he
gently,
was
flying
moving
over
at
the
all.
bone-eating
The
shamans,
wind from the
and
punch
landing on a
surged
bamboo
into his
building.
face,
And
he
his
turned
scarlet
around
hair
and
ruffled.
pointed a finger
He turned to
just
his side
happening
with a
to touch
smile
the head of a charging
and threw
shaman.
a punch. The power
Die.
of
The
tremors
bone-eating
erupted.
chieftain ravished
With a crack,
with joy.
the shaman's
Their
spine
sizes differed
snapped,
by more than 10
and he
times,
fell powerlessly.
and the fist
Li
was even
Qingshan
larger
could
than his head.
already
The
wield
punch
the
was
power of
enough to
tremors
crush him
with
to a pulp.
ease.
Bang.
Originally,
The two
he
fists
could have
collided.
shattered his heart.
Li Qingshan's
The reason
chubby
why
little
he
fist
spared his
sank
life
deeply
was
into the
only
bone-eating
because
chieftain's
he had a use
huge
for him.
black,
Over a
hairy
dozen
hand.
claws took
Li
advantage of this
Qingshan's
opportunity
tiny
to
body
reach
did not
towards
sway
him.
at all.
The vicious
Instead,
smile, the
he had
colossal
just
bone-eating
revealed
chieftain,
stiffened.
was sent flying. His arm was flung away, becoming as limp as a noodle. Even his entire right shoulder had caved in, knocking over a group of bone-eating shamans. Li Qingshan snickered. "You foolish barbarian. You're looking to die if you want to compete with me in strength." He seemed tiny, but if he reverted to his original form, he would be 2 or 3 meters tall at the very least. Their proportions were completely reversed. Unfortunately, the bone-eating chieftain's body was much tougher than regular bone-eating shamans, so he failed to snap his spine in a single strike. Li Qingshan was just about to follow up with another attack when he suddenly stopped and looked back. The two-headed snake, condensed from black smoke, had silently slithered over from behind, suddenly opening its mouth and biting towards him. Tiger Demon's breath. A gust of wind from Li Qingshan's breath tore the two-headed snake to pieces. It followed the black smoke and directly pierced the bone-eating shaman priest who had launched a sneak attack. "Chief, go to the altar and ask for the power of the ancestors." The bone-eating shaman priest coughed up blood and bellowed, "This is a disaster that will wipe out the entire tribe." "Stop him," the bone-eating chieftain ordered loudly. Clutching his crippled arm, he rushed towards the stronghold. He was filled with regret and resentment. His losses in the fragrant flower market had already made him feel extremely pained, but he never thought he would actually provoke something so terrifying. However, as long as he asked for the power of the ancestors, he would definitely be able to kill him, devour his flesh and blood, and undergo the heavenly tribulation. The bone-eating shamans charged over fearlessly, wanting to use their lives to buy time for the bone-eating chieftain. Li Qingshan stomped his right foot and leapt up. The shamans leapt up and swung their claws with him, but they missed. They all raised their heads and extended their arms, waiting for him to fall. "Be careful!" Chrysanthemum Fragilis cried out. Her voice was filled with concern. If it were not for the fact that she hid in the distance on a tree, ready to retreat at any time, perhaps Li Qingshan would feel a little grateful. When he looked down, he saw many ferocious faces and mouths full of fangs. Li Qingshan smiled. A pair of glorious wings suddenly unfurled on his back, and he grew several meters taller again. His scarlet eyes locked onto the bone-eating chieftain's back, leaving behind a scarlet streak of light as he swooped down like an eagle swooping down to a rabbit. He did not have the time to see what trump cards these barbarians had, or perhaps they were putting on an act and looking down on others just because he was strong enough. Even a lion would use its full strength to catch a rabbit. He only had a single objective here: annihilate the entire tribe. And the simpler and easier it was, the better. A gust of wind swept over from behind, and the bone-eating chieftain suddenly looked back. Before he could even respond, Li Qingshan had planted a foot on his back. With a series of cracks, his spine broke inch by inch, and he collapsed on the ground, completely immobilized. He let out a howl of despair. Both the chieftain and the shaman priest had been defeated, so the morale of the bone-eating shamans plummeted. Li Qingshan did not stop at all, using the force of the stomp to fly back. With the assistance of his wings, he moved even faster, leaving behind a trail of fire. Wherever he passed by, the shamans all collapsed under Chrysanthemum Fragilis's surprised I'll lend you a gaze.
hand.
Li Qingshan unfurled his wings
out,
and
walked
leapt
past the
down
bone
from the
eating
tree,
shamans one
powering
by
the
one.
fragrant flower
Blood-red
as hard
flames
as she
flew
could.
out of their
A
bodies.
fragrant
and they shriveled
wind
up
drifted
like
through
they
the
had been
air,
sucked
which was
dry.
extremely
The
effective against
bone-eating
regular
chieftain
bone-eating
was utterly
shamans.
furious.
Li Qingshan
Stop.
specially
If you wanna
targeted the
kill,
stronger
kill me.
shamans, and they
Spare my
all fell in
clansmen.
a single strike. Li
A while
Qingshan
later,
snickered.
not a
I
single
couldn't tell,
bone-eating
but
shaman
you're
remained
quite
standing.
loyal. None
Don't
of them
worry,
managed to escape.
none of you can escape.
Chrysanthemum Fragilus's
bone-eating
face flushed
shaman
with
priest said,
excitement,
"Spare
along
my
with a
life,
sense of disbelief.
and I'm willing to be
the
your
powerful
servant.
bone-eating
I'll
tribe
tell you where
was finished.
the wealth
Just
of
like
the bone-eating
that.
tribe
It was
is
unimaginably
hidden.
easy.
I can even
She
help
raised
you
her
obtain the
hand,
power
about
of your
to
ancestors.
unleash a massacre. The bone-eating
Stop.
chieftain roared.
Li Qingshan
You
called
traitor.
out.
Why?
The bone-eating
I
shamans
told you
roared
I have a
too.
gift for you.
Traitor.
You sure are a clever person. Li Qingshan arrived before the bone-eating shaman priest and picked up his cane, twirling it around in his hand. Though I already have a servant, so forget about you. An extremely weak, bright red flame flew out. A while later, all of the bone-eating shamans had their life force drained away, reduced to a pile of withered corpses. Li Qingshan held a flame of life that was around the size of his head in his right hand. He smiled at Chrysanthemum Fragilis and said, "Come, man, have a taste of the feast I've made for you." Although they had been getting along quite well in the past few days, this was called being prepared. He did not want someone to secretly leak this matter to the White Lotus sect. "I don't want a—" Chrysanthemum Fragilis recalled the monster the merchant had turned into and retreated in fright. Li Qingshan smiled. "You have to be an obedient daughter." Chapter 729. It's not like I'm trying to harm you, so what are you so afraid for? How many people can only dream of an opportunity like this? Let alone everything else. It'll be very easy for you to increase your lifespan by a few decades, and your body will become even tougher than these barbarians. Li Qingshan crouched down and extended his hand, gently caressing Chrysanthemum Fragilis's cheek. Although he spoke in a negotiating tone, It made Chrysanthemum Fragilis's heart tremble. She understood one thing more and more. No matter how cute a child he seemed, no matter how helpless he felt when he was being teased, he was still a powerful monster that she could not contend against at all. Once it touched on the fundamentals, she would not be able to put up any resistance or rejection. I don't want to become a monster, or I'd rather die. Chrysanthemum Fragilis called out. As soon as she thought about how she would become as twisted and ugly as the merchants of Goldie Dock, she shivered. Even if it was slightly better, becoming a bone-eating shaman was completely unacceptable to her. How can that be? He'll only become younger and prettier. Goldie Bow wanted to sell me out, which was why I stimulated all of the potential in his body, making him fight these barbarians to the death. Otherwise, he'd probably be even more powerful than you already. And the life force he imbues into his body is far too impure, which is why it's easier for him to lose control. And this ball of life comes from the same race. I've already refined it. Don't worry, as long as you're good, why would I harm you? Li Qingshan guided her patiently, but the more sincere and gentle his tone was, the more afraid The space
Chrysanthemum
inside was
only
only
the
the
size
size
of
of
a
a
woodshed.
Even if
And
she
there were
did not
many
become a
random
monster,
items.
it would still
He had
mean
no
she would be
idea
under
what
his
they were
control,
for.
unable
So he
to
hung
break
them on his
free.
waist
She
casually.
stared straight at
How
Li
are we supposed
Qingshan
to
as
deal
tears welled
with
up in her
so
eyes.
many of them?
For a
Why
moment,
don't we just leave
she
them
was
here?
speechless.
They'll rot in
Li
less than 10
Qingshan
days.
waited for her to calm
Chrysanthemum
down a little.
Fragilis
Now, tell me your
widened
answer.
her eyes.
There
I
were
agree.
several hundred
All right,
corpses
let go
here.
of your body
Just
and
how
mind.
large of a hole
Li
would they
Qingshan
have to
blew
dig
gently
to bury them all?
and the blood-red
Be good.
flames
If you
flowed
don't,
towards
you'll
Chrysanthemum
turn into a
Fragilis,
monster, merging
Li
into her
Qingshan
body
said
strand by
unconcernedly,
strand,
making his way into the depths
Chrysanthemum
of the
Fragilis
stronghold.
let out
Originally,
a moan,
he had
and
only
a great
mentioned it
pleasure burst
casually,
forth from her
but
body.
since he had said
Her
it,
mind
it
went
became
blank,
an order,
and
he had
after
gone
an
to great
unknown
lengths
period
to
of
extract
time,
life
she
force
slowly
for her to
regained
recover her youth
consciousness.
and
She
increase her
felt
strength
numb all over her
drastically.
body.
Was
And there
this
was
supposed
an
to be the support of
indescribable
love?
restraint.
Yes,
It was as if she had been
Chrysanthemum
reborn,
Fragilis
and an
immediately
unprecedented power
Li
surged in her
Qingshan
body.
arrived at the
He
end
was
of the
not like
stronghold
Goldie
and raised
Bow,
his head,
who was only
an
immortal,
ancient totem
who had been
was
forcefully
painted on the
pushed to
wall.
shaman. It was
She
just
had
a few
decades of
strokes,
cultivation
but it
experience.
fully displayed
She
its
quickly
charm.
meditated.
It was lifelike,
adjusted her
shaped like a
breathing,
tiger,
but
guiding
it was
this energy
even more
back
vicious
to the right path.
There was a pair of wings
the
on its
fragrant
back,
flower goo
which
in her
did
body
resemble
was
the tiger
nourished
demon,
and had another
slightly.
breakthrough.
However,
Li
the
Qingshan
tiger
smiled
demon was
and
purely
said,
battle
"How do you
and killing
feel?"
intent,
Chrysanthemum
while the totem
Fragilis's
possessed
first
deep
reaction
malice.
wasn't
It
to
opened
check
its mouth
how much stronger
as
she had
if
become.
it was about to
Instead,
swallow someone whole.
she took out her
If he had
bronze
guessed
mirror
correctly,
to see
this
if
was
she
the
had become
location of the
uglier.
bone-eating
She couldn't
tribe's
help but
altar.
cheer.
It
That's
gave
great.
off a faint,
In the
frightening
past,
power, although she
that
didn't
was the
look
result
old because
of
of her
countless
chi
years of
refinement.
worship from the
She was a
bone-eating
mother
tribe.
of 3 children
Li
after all.
Qingshan
There were
pressed his
faint
hand
crow's
against
feet
the
at the
wall
corners of her
gently.
eyes.
Immediately,
And her skin
the totem on the
wasn't
wall
as
sprang
tight
to
as
life.
before, staring
Now,
at him
however,
viciously. She
it
seemed
let
to
out
have
a roar
returned to her 20s
and lunged off the
She
wall.
was radiant.
The spirit
To a
turtle's
woman,
profound
especially
shell.
a beauty,
Li
there was
Qingshan
nothing
bellowed out,
more terrifying
and the
than
totemic
watching
beast
herself gradually
slammed
age in
against
the
the
mirror.
spirit turtle's
And there was
profound
nothing
shell
more joyous
viciously.
than recovering her
Bang.
youth. Cracks appeared on the
Immediately,
spirit
she
turtle's
felt like her
profound
worries
shell.
just now
What
were
great strength!
pointless.
This
Although
must
there
be
were
the bone-eating
gains and
tribe's
losses,
strongest
it
trump
seemed
card.
like her luck
They
was
actually
pretty
have
good right
something
now.
similar to a guardian
Deal with these
beast.
corpses.
Its strength has
Qingshan
already
ordered.
approached Demon
As he
General.
fiddled around with the walking
Fortunately,
stick,
they didn't
he
activate
picked up a
it,
small
or
100
it
treasures
really
pouch
would be
from
rather
beside the shaman
troublesome.
priest.
He
Clang.
opened it
The
and took a
spirit
look.
turtle's profound shell shattered. Li Qingshan unfurled his wings and took to the sky. The totemic beast also flapped its wings and took off, pursuing him closely. However, when it reached an altitude of several hundred meters, it was unable to advance any further. Clearly, it was unable to stray too far from the altar. Li Qingshan studied the monster closely. Sure enough, it seemed like a vicious black tiger, constantly swiping its claws past him. The totemic beast roared for a while before returning to the wall. Li Qingshan exhaled gently, and a gust of wind slammed against it viciously. The totemic beast turned around and lunged over, brandishing its claws and teeth. It obviously still failed to reach Li Qingshan. Whenever the totemic beast attempted to return to the altar, Li Qingshan would harass it. This went on for over 2 hours. The totemic beast gradually thinned out, finally vanishing from the surroundings. Li Qingshan arrived before the altar and threw a punch at the wall. The wall shattered loudly, and pieces of rock fell off. There was a gleam of light, and Li Qingshan extended his hand and caught it. It was a translucent skull that seemed to be both human and beast, shining under the sunlight. He had sensed something was hidden in the altar a long time ago, which was why he went to the trouble of dealing with the totemic beast. He looked back and asked, "What's this?" "This is the skull of the ancestor of the bone-eating tribe. Chrysanthemum fragilis happened to make her way over. Don't they say they eat their ancestors? This is a bone-eating shaman that has undergone the heavenly tribulation. It's probably just too tough, such that no one can bite through it. Are there other bone-eating tribes?" Li Qingshan brought the skull to the tip of his nose and sniffed it gently, sinking into his thoughts. Of course, bone-eating barbarians are everywhere in the Mist Province. There are tribes of various sizes. This can only be regarded as average. It's said that large bone-eating tribes have several thousand bone-eating barbarians. Chapter 730. The vicious aura in the crystal skull was similar to the tiger demons. It was definitely not as simple as the skull of a powerful bone-eating shaman. It was probably related to the totemic, vicious beast they worshipped, apart from the second, third, and fourth layers of the phoenix transformation. Li Qingshan had to practice next, as well as the fifth layer of the tiger demon. Once he harmonized the various powers in his body and completed these two targets, even if he ran into the Dragon King of the Sea again, he would be able to advance and retreat with ease. As a result, even if it was even slightly related to his cultivation, he would place great importance on it. What's the name of the totemic beast they worship? Chrysanthemum fragilis said, Qiongqi. It's a vicious beast that likes to eat humans. All of the bone-eating tribes worship it. Legend has it that in ancient times, a tribe discovered a dead Qiongqi. After eating its flesh and blood, it became a powerful shaman of immense strength. It specialized in feeding on its own kind, producing countless bone-eating tribes. Qiongqi. Li Qingshan's gaze shifted in thought, landing on Chrysanthemum fragilis. Have you done what I told you to do? There are so many corpses. There's no need to deal with them at all. Spare me, you? Because he didn't want outsiders to know of his existence.
Already been the matriarch
He specifically
for many
asked
years.
Chrysanthemum fragilis
So why
to
would
set
she
up
be
a
willing to
large
do such
area
menial
of the
work?
fragrant flower
After a
workshop
while,
as
she
she ran out of
restricted
patience.
Here,
So she just
he
sat
could
on the
enjoy
ground
delicious food
and watched
and
Li
wine from all
Qingshan
over the
fight
world.
the totemic
There
beast.
was also a beauty.
Go. Although he
want
couldn't
to
really do
Chrysanthemum
anything,
fragilis
other than that,
said in a
he could
spoiled
do whatever
manner.
he wanted. Since she
Who
could
is
not
so
use
bold
force,
as to
she would
barge
use
in?
force.
Aren't they
She would still
afraid
be
of
able to
Chrysanthemum
achieve her
fragilis's
objective.
punishment?
She was already
Through
considering
the
how she
rippling
could
water,
use his
a
power
young
to
woman
obtain even more
stood
benefits.
beside the hot spring.
Li Qingshan
She was
snapped his
dressed in
fingers,
green
and
clothes
Chrysanthemum
made of
fragilis
extraordinary
collapsed
material.
on the ground.
She should have possessed
Her blood
an
surged
extremely noble
as if she had been
status
placed
in
in
the
a fire
fragrant
to
flower
roast.
market.
But she
Her
could
delicate
not utter a
appearance
single
did bear
word.
some
The
resemblance
life
to
force that
Chrysanthemum
had merged
fragilis.
with her
Li
possessed
Qingshan
his imprint.
immediately guessed
It could
her
both
name.
extend
She
her
was
lifespan
Chrysanthemum
and strengthen her
fragilis's
body,
youngest
but
daughter,
it could also become a
Xianghua
lethal
Lu.
poison.
Mother Sure
Just
is
like how it
stingy.
was said,
She
only
has the
petty
unaging
people
spring
and
of
women
youth.
are difficult to
Yet
nurture.
she's not even willing
He
to share
really
it
had
with
been
her
a little
own
too
daughter.
polite to her in the
Xianghua
past few
Lu
days,
muttered, looking
perhaps
around
she
like a
had
thief.
already grown
She only
accustomed
said that to
bossing
cover up her
people
guilt.
around in the
Over a
position
year
of
ago,
matriarch.
Chrysanthemum
But from now
fragilis's
on,
strength
you have to learn to
suddenly
obey.
increased
What I value
drastically.
the most is
She recovered
fairness.
her youth.
Think
and
about
announced
what you
that
paid,
she had
and
already
then look at
destroyed
what you
the
got in
bone-eating
return.
tribe.
She
You
also
think it's
gathered
fair?
the leaders
I
of the
won't
various
stay here
tribes
forever.
and held a
It
meeting
won't take me more than 2
establishing the
years.
fragrant flower
And
clan
then you'll
as the
never see
leader.
me again
It
for
was
the rest
also
of
at
your
that
life.
time that she set up a
Hopefully,
restricted
in this
area
short
in the
period of
fragrant
time,
flower workshop.
if you can cooperate
As a
with me,
result, at
there were
least you will
rumors
be
that
worthy
the
of
unaging
my
spring
reward.
of youth gushed
If you
out
can't
from the
stand
spring
being
in the
bossed
fragrant
around,
flower workshop.
I can put everything
Regular
back on
people
track.
still doubted
What do
it,
you think?
but the young woman believed
I
it to be
won't dare
true.
to do it again.
Mother is currently
Chrysanthemum
receiving an
fragilis
envoy from the
felt
White
her
Lotus
whole
sect,
body
so she
relax.
definitely won't discover
She was
me.
drenched
Even
in
if she
sweat,
does, and
I'll be going to
fear
the
was
White
written all
Lotus
over her
sect
face.
very soon.
I have faith in
She
you.
can't do anything to
Under
me.
Li Qingshan's
If I don't
patient
try
guidance,
now,
Chrysanthemum
another
fragilis
chance.
quickly
The
completed
young
her
woman
task.
comforted herself
She
inside
mounted the beast of
and
burden
quickly
and
undressed,
set off on her journey
revealing
back,
her graceful
leaving
figure.
behind an empty
She
stockade
tested the water
in the middle
temperature
of the
with
forest.
the tip of her
It would
foot
not take
first
long
before
it
slipping
was
into the
swallowed
water
up by
like
new
a
plants.
fish.
Didn't
The
you
sun
say you're
set
only
and
13?
rose. You
Time
sure have
flew
developed
by
quite
Li Qingshan grew up
Li
quickly.
Qingshan
His
evaluated
scarlet
in
hair
admiration.
gradually
The
fell
women
to his
of the
shoulders.
Mist province
The power
developed
that
early.
originally belonged
Many
to
of them
him
married at
returned
this age,
to his body
but
bit
they
by
aged
bit.
especially
He was
quickly
even
too.
stronger than
If they were
before.
mortals who did
It was
not
time to
practice
take back
internal martial
what
arts
belonged
or
to him.
chi practitioners,
He suddenly opened
they would
his
age
eyes
rapidly
and felt an aura
once they
coming
reached
to the side of the
30 or
hot
40.
spring.
By
But
the
it was
time
not
they reached
chrysanthemum
40 or 50,
fragilis. They would be
he
like
couldn't
old
help
women.
but feel a little strange.
I'm going to be traveling with her very soon. The arrival of the envoy from the White Lotus sect was actually because he had urged Chrysanthemum fragilis to request the White Lotus sect to recruit a group of followers from the fragrant flower market. He planned on using this opportunity to infiltrate the White Lotus sect and take back the Azura field. Although he could take it back openly once his strength completely recovered, he really did not want to wait any longer. He did not want the news that North Moon was still alive to reach the Dragon King of the Sea's ears.
Xiang Hualu lay comfortably in the hot spring as if the water really did have the miraculous effect of restoring youth. She immediately cast all of her worries to the back of her head and gradually became spirited. She dove into the water and began swimming. Suddenly, she discovered a pair of scarlet eyes staring straight at her. Gurgle! Xiang Hualu let out a cry of surprise and turned into a bubble. She swung her slender legs and quickly retreated to the edge of the hot spring. She covered her chest with one hand and shouted, "Who are you? Come out." A moment later, a small figure rose up from the water. His black eyes were clear and spirited, and his wet black hair hung down to his shoulders. It was Li Qingshan, who had concealed his demonic characteristics. Whether it was his sharp teeth, claws, or the sharp horns on his head, they were all gone. He looked like a child of 11 or 12 years old. What a beautiful child! Xiang Hualu exclaimed in her heart and relaxed her guard. "Who are you? Are you my mother's lover?" As she spoke, she began to laugh. How could it be? He was still so young. Lover, Li Qingshan thought. She really is precocious. However, in the Fragrant Flower clan, it was really common for powerful women to find a few lovers. The little girl did not even try to hide it. "Have you also come to steal the Fountain of Youth? How dare you?" Xiang Hualu could not recall that there was such a child in the clan. Otherwise, she would definitely remember him very clearly. Thus, she guessed that his goal was the same as hers. She flipped her palm and wanted to restrain him, but then she thought of something else. If I capture him and give him to my mother, wouldn't I also be exposed? Xiang Hualu, you can't be so stupid. If such a beautiful child becomes fertilizer, that would be too much of a pity. I'll do a good deed and let her live. Little brother, hurry up and leave. If my mother finds out, you're dead for sure. Little brother, if your mother dared to call me that, I would definitely beat her until she called me father. This little girl actually has some kindness. Didn't you also come to steal the Fountain of Youth? Why are you letting me go? This is my family's Fountain of Youth. How can it be called stealing? You thief, you dare to say that to me. How dare you? Xiang Hualu's face was bright red. Her hands danced excitedly, and she came over to grab Li Qingshan. The unbloomed buds were close at hand, trembling slightly. Although they were not plump, they still had a certain charm. The 2 pink cherries were even more alluring. What are you looking at? Believe it or not, I'll dig out your eyes. Forget it, you brat. Don't you know anything? Hurry up and get out. Xiang Hualu did not try to hide anymore. She grabbed Li Qingshan's wrist and pulled him to the side of the hot spring, but he did not budge at all. Her 2 hands forcefully pulled him back. How could Li Qingshan? I couldn't let her go, but he wrapped his arms around her slender
face was
waist
bright red.
that was like a weak
Suddenly,
willow. Her hands slipped, lightly caressing
and she
her
fell
delicate
backward.
body. She
Xiang
immediately
Hualu
flipped
already
over
knew a little
and
about
stood
the
up,
matters between
only
men
to
and
see
women.
him smiling.
But
this was still the first
Xiang
time
Hualu
she
was
had
even more
experienced
annoyed.
something like
She
this.
changed from pushing
How
to
could
pulling,
the sensitive
but
body
it was
of a young
obviously
girl be
still
a match
useless.
for Li Qingshan?
Li Qingshan
A
smiled
strange
and said,
feeling of
"I said I
numbness
won't
and
leave,
itchiness
so I
arose
won't
in her
leave.
heart,
Who
and her
cares whose
struggles
family it is?
gradually became
If you can throw me
powerless.
out, then I'm
Alu,
useless.
what are you guys doing? All right, if
An
I don't throw you
explosive
out
shout
today,
startled
little brat,
Xiang
then
Hualu
I'm
back
useless.
to reality.
Turning
Xiang
around,
Hualu spread
she
her
saw
slender
Chrysanthemum
arms
Fragilis
and hugged
standing
him
at the
tightly
edge of the
in
hot
embrace.
spring. Her
She
face
pulled him
filled
up
with shock
forcefully.
and anger. As long as his feet did
this
not
little
touch the
bastard
ground,
came to
he
steal the
naturally would
unaging
not
spring
be
of
able to
youth.
borrow any strength.
I'm not his match.
This made Li
Quickly
Qingshan
restrain him.
very happy.
Li Qingshan
the
took
soft
the
and
opportunity
fragrant
to let
body was
go
in
of
his
Xiang
embrace,
Hualu
and the bud that had
winked
just
at
developed was
Chrysanthemum
pressed against his
Fragilis.
face.
It
Chrysanthemum
revealed
Fragilis
a
said,
malicious
"You
smile.
make the first move,"
And he opened his mouth
Xiang
to take a
Hualu
light
kicked
bite.
Li Qingshan hatefully
Let go.
grabbed her clothes
Shut up. I'm
and
not
ran
your
out
mother.
as if
Xiang
escaping.
Hualu
Li
cried out in
Qingshan
shock
spread his hands
and wanted to push him away.
"Since we're traveling together, let's get to know each other first. When can we set off?" "Probably in less than 10 days we can set off." "Good. You'll get what you want very soon, and you won't have to listen to my orders anymore. You're not coming back. Chrysanthemum Fragilis said in shock. She had not thought that he would let her go so easily. Of course. Is this place very fun? Li Qingshan stood on the surface of the water, and with a thought, the surface of the water became as smooth as a mirror. Under Chrysanthemum Fragilis's shocked gaze, another tiny north moon leaped out of the water. The long-awaited moon in the mirror. Chapter 731. Gusts of wind surged, turning into a pair of semi-transparent wings on Li Qingshan's back. The wings of wind that he had not seen in a very long time. The fierce wind kicked up a huge wave in the hot spring. With a sudden flap of the wings, he rushed into the air and dove into the depths of the clouds in the blink of an eye. The fragrant flower house was as small as a mustard seed, blurry in the endless sea of trees. He cast his gaze towards the north again and whistled off. Although he was unable to borrow the atmospheric winds because his strength had yet to fully recover, he still maintained a straight line and constantly flapped his wings, moving faster and faster, leaving behind a spiral stream of air. With this innate ability, even a distance of 5,000 kilometers was nothing. It would take him a day or two at most to reach the border between the Mist Province and the Green Province. Afterwards, he would confirm his bearings and fly off in the direction of the Rui Commandery. Li Qingshan gazed at the sky and diverted a sliver of his attention to his mirror clone. He lowered his head and said, "Man, how do you plan on explaining my identity?" Only then did Chrysanthemum Fragilis return to her senses. What was that just then? It's just a clone. Chrysanthemum Fragilis was shocked. It's just a clone. In the past year or so, She had never seen him fight again. She had only watched him grow up day by day. Although she knew he was constantly growing stronger, she had no idea just how strong he was. Just now, with that fleeting glimpse, she understood just how powerful this child before her was. In the past, he had promised to give her freedom after using her for 2 years at most. She was still rather doubtful. If she were a man, she would never let go of a beautiful matriarch like her, who could do whatever she wanted as a servant so easily. Now, she no longer had any doubts. To him, she was completely insignificant.